Hear you loud and clear, Commissioner.
I don't see anything
here.
on the, I don't see
here.
anything here on the screen.
Yeah, I don't see anything on the screen either, except for the Zoom attendance.
We're here. Can you not see us? Do we not have a?
Well, there, I'll get Porta Bellingham, just the white label now with our names on it. There we go. Stuff starting to show up. There we go.
I can do it.
Okay, is Ken here?
Yeah, Ken's here.
Okay.
I moved. I was
All right.
feeling pretty claustrophobic up there, so I moved.
Yeah, you get a cocktail down there, huh?
I do. I'm in trouble.
Okay. All right. I'd like to close the executive session of April 19th, 2022 of the Port of Bellingham Commission and open the public meeting. We'll take a roll call. Commissioner Bell,
Present.
Commissioner Shepard.
I'm here.
Okay, and at this time, we will do public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do. Give Carrie just a second to get back to her seat.
Oh, she's running. I see that. Slow down.
Well, I'm limping. Let's see. Brian Rust.
Brian, if you would, is he there or is he on?
He's on his way to the microphone right now.
Can
Very
can
good.
you give your address before you share? Okay.
I
That's-
can't hear anything.
That's what you signed here, but if you have nothing to say, you don't have to.
Well, the only thing I would say is that there's a couple things that pertain to the community voting center tonight, and I'm excited to hear what people have to say about that. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And,
Anyone else?
oh, okay. Okay.
We had a little confusion here, Commissioner. The attendance sheet or the sign-up sheet was thought to be an attendance sheet. So we indeed do not have anyone signed up for public comment. So if there's anyone online that would like to make a comment, please unmute yourself and make yourself known.
I have a comment, if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
That you, Jim?
Yes, that's,
Okay.
so this is Jim Kyle. I'm going to testify about resolution 1403. Is this working okay? I can't see anything on the screen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. The mortgage model proposal I'm going to talk about first as one member of the Marina Advisory Committee Mortgage Model Subcommittee, and second as president of the Working Waterfront Coalition. My message throughout this is this: to vote on this action item today would be grossly premature. The first, regarding the MAC process, I also served on the Mortgage Model Subcommittee in 2014. That time, with the clear mandate from the Commission, we developed well-documented recommendations which were referred to the whole MAC for approval. Our work product was then sent to the Commission for consideration. Voters were well informed and filled Commission chambers for the meeting. There was some dissent from the public, but the process was transparent. The proposal passed 2-1. It was a textbook way to create good public policy. Our more recent effort fell well short of that. When the MAC Mortgage Subcommittee began its work, there were lingering unanswered background questions. We did not have a clear mandate and we were stumbling around. We did our best to produce some recommendations, but they were poorly documented and the process was abruptly terminated. Resolution 1403 is not the work product of the MAC, although some of our recommendations survive in principle, if not detail. Now, from the perspective of the Working Waterfront Coalition, there are some good things in Resolution 1403. Our board supports mortgage rate increases to pay for harbor reconstruction. Our board also authorized support for the ACF program, with improved support for larger vessels. The MAC recommendations agree, and this resolution includes this support. So, from the perspective of the Working Waterfront Coalition, what is not to like? In fact, quite a bit. Our members, like the boating public, wonder why this proposal to nearly double mortgage rates over 10 years is being rammed through with no attempt to inform the public and almost no opportunity for their input. The MAC meeting where this proposal first appeared was just 1 week ago. MAC agendas are not posted for the public. As you must have noticed, not a single member of the voting public was present. If the agenda had been publicized, that room would have been full of voters, and yes, it would have been a long meeting. Now, about those voters that somehow happened to learn about the proposal, how do they give input? If they want to comment, the best they could have done was to read the agenda documents and testify right now based on questionable understanding. They can listen to the upcoming presentation, but cannot comment afterward before the vote is taken. Many others have still not even heard about this proposal. No matter what happens between now and a vote taken today, this is not a transparent process and it's too late to change that today. In light of these facts and in the interest of transparency, we request that you postpone today's vote. A postponement would give you time to publicize the proposal, explain it, and give the public a meaningful chance to weigh in. After a delay of 4 years, what is the hurry now? Please show your constituents some respect and delay voting on Resolution 1403, at least until the next commission meeting. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate those comments. Do we have anyone else?
Paul Burrell would like to say something.
Thanks, Commissioners. Paul
Paul.
Burrell, Whatcom County resident, active commercial fisherman, leaseholder, Port of Bellingham, and chairperson of the Marine Advisory Committee. I'd like to make a comment based on what Jim said is very important. The transparency of this is good. The plan, as I'd like to speak to you as the chairperson of the MAC, not for the MAC, but the plan did come through fairly fast, and I'd like to implore the commission to respect the process, and that's the most important part of this. The MAC was formed in 1991. We're required to have at least 10 people. Currently, we have 12. We're an excellent cross-section of the user groups that use the port. Many things the MAC can help with are issues such as this: the mortgage model, the liveaboard issues, boathouse issues, ACF locker issues. We can kind of get in front of these things before anything becomes a problem. And I'd just like to say again today, as the chairperson of the MAC, thank you to the commissioners that you do attend, but I also want to keep that, our sight on what the process is and to follow through with that. I do have to agree with Jim that this was a little bit of a fast process. The MAC did agree that this passes through. There is the staff did work very hard with that, and this is not an easy process, but I think a short delay would be advisable myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else? Hearing no one else, I guess we'll move to the reading of the advisory committee meeting schedules. We have a Marina Advisory Committee MAC meeting, May 10th at 6 p.m. at the Harbor Center Building Conference Room, 1801 Roeder Avenue, Bellingham. In person only, it says, so I'm assuming no Zoom. Can somebody verify that?
That's correct.
Thank you. The BIAC, Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, July 14th at 4 p.m. And this one is Zoom only, so don't show up and we'll let you in the door, I guess. So that's it for our advisory committee meeting schedules. And I guess we'll move to consent agenda. Carrie, if you please.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through T.
Discussion, Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, I've got a discussion on B and L. I don't want to pull them from the agenda, but I do want to make some comments. Is this the time you want me to do that?
Yes, if you would, please.
My comment on B, and I discussed this with Rob a little bit, was really the idea of giving a low interest loan to a brewery could, I believe, easily get bank financing, was a little bit out of step. And I do have an understanding that this was a use it or lose it situation with the loan money that we have. But I just want to make it clear that this is an aberration and that we're not short on brewers and competition in the brewing market. And therefore, it's an extraordinary step for us to take to give a low interest loan to a startup of this nature. And I just wanted to be on record as to say that I'm going to vote for this, knowing that we would lose the capital investment funds if we didn't use them. And I don't want to do that. But this is not the type of business I believe this fund was established for. The second one is on L, and Sunil, I don't need you to comment on this either. I'm just expressing that we only get a $20 per hour reimbursement for the police operations at the airport, and we're paying almost $75 per hour. So we're making a $500,000 commitment to do policing just to keep our airport operational on a requirement by the FAA. And we do not get full reimbursement for that. And that sticks in my craw. If they're going to require that we man it and operate based on their recommendations, they should at least fund that operation to its fullest extent. We are going to be out of pocket $400,000 above and beyond what they are going to give us reimbursement for. Again, we've got to have this, so I'm going to vote in favor of it. But those are two that just kind of stick in my craw, and I will follow hard as I do so.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Shepherd.
Yeah, I have a comment on M, and I just want to relay some appreciation from folks I've heard from at the Community Voting Center about their work with Elliot and Terry, crafting both this lease agreement and then the other item we have related to their bathroom project. I think the one thing I keep hearing is that the voting center is they're seeing really high demand. It's why we are looking at increasing the availability of restroom and shower facilities. They are also wanting to work with our staff to look at available space in the warehouses adjacent. It seems like they're occupying part of one and want to see if there is additional space available. And there is some traffic study that they're looking for getting access to so they can best figure out how to position their resources and see if there are any potential for expansion or growth in the limited footprint that we have. So I recognize there's a lot of things going on in that limited amount of space. Those were two requests that they had, one for that traffic study to get from our staff, and then to keep discussion going about any additional warehousing space for their projects. But that this process has been a good one that they've gotten to get these items on our agenda today.
Anything further, Commissioner Shepherd?
That's it for me.
Commissioner Bell, anything further?
None from me. Thank you, Rob.
Okay. Rob, could you maybe just elaborate on consent agenda item B just a little bit for clarification? I understand Commissioner Bell's sensitivity to that, as I have some too, but maybe there's a bit more of a story behind that.
So we manage what's called a revolving loan fund. We refer to it as the RLF, and it has an independent number of bankers on a committee that determines whether someone's bankable or not and whether we should loan them the money at low interest rates. Historically, the port's used some of its own money for that, but also a good deal of federal money goes into that. And we had a chunk of federal money, I want to say $140-some thousand, that had to be put to work by a certain period of time, and we didn't have any takers for it. Part of that is because of the pandemic, people weren't bringing on debt very easily, and part of it was just the market conditions. But we were going to forfeit that $140-some odd thousand back to the federal government, and it would not go to work in our community. John Michener did a pretty good job of finding a new business that could use the low interest loan. It does happen to be a brewery. It's going in on State Street or James Street, where the old lighting store was, right next to Kona Bike there. And they're going to take a loan of that 140. They're going to take about 120 of it, and we forfeited the rest. I think the amount we forfeited came around, I want to say $15,000 or $18,000 that we're going to turn back to the federal government now. But if it weren't for this this loan, we'd be turning that whole amount back. Now, the advantage of doing this loan is this this brewery will continue to pay us back over the next however period of time we've amortized that loan, and that money will now be permanently in our community with no threat of forfeiting it in the future. So we're loaning it out, we'll get it paid back, and then we'll loan it out again, and it'll go to work.
Very good. That clarifies it, makes me feel better. I think that given the fact that there was nobody else that was forward and they didn't bump anybody and the money will come back, that's, I think I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in, Bobby, if I can. I sat in on the presentation from this prospective business to the committee, and John's comments on their packet of information they provided was that they provided the most complete and thorough information about their business plan and prospective growth that he had seen for any other application. They were very thorough, very professional. The committee was impressed with the work that they put forward and their product that they expect to bring to the community. So the group that reviewed this is made up of bankers and John from our economic development team. I sit in as a participant as well. And the group was very enthusiastic about the success and future for that company, and that this money is going to do good in our community.
Good. Sounds like that a good decision was made in, and I hope the company does well. Now, for as the motion or the M, I'm in agreement. I like that we're going to be moving the voting community center ahead here, and this will help them out. When I first came to be a commissioner, almost 7 years ago now, it was one of the first things on the plate was to try and get them a better deal and help them with the things they do, because it's a great thing for our community. As we live on the water, and this routes a number of our young people to the water and gives them a intersection to go to if they can't afford to otherwise. So that's great. I have nothing further on the consent agenda. So Carrie, if you please.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through T.
Commissioner Bell.
Yes, with the approved hard swallow.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yes, as well.
And Commissioner Briscoe's a yes as well. Passes 3-0. So Carrie, if you would move us to our
Sure.
presentations, please.
Yeah,
Looks like we have a three of them.
Okay, our first presentation is Jim Kyle with the Working Waterfront Coalition. They're going to talk about the apprenticeship program.
It looks like it's going to be Debbie Granger, not Jim Kyle talking, so.
Let me find this here. I might get us out of Zoom and or stop share.
Actually,
Okay.
since you call my name, could I cut in just for a moment?
You may.
This is Jim. So maybe it's just me, but what I see on the screen here is the consent agenda. It's been there since before. Oh, there's Bobby.
Oh, that's scary, huh?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
That's what I thought.
Well, it's also here.
It's here there.
But that's not,
Double click that. It's not the right one. Oh, I'm sorry.
so can we get out of here and go to the desktop?
Yeah, I'll get it.
Thank you.
While we're in the middle of this struggle, I'd like to apologize to our audience for not being present. It's highly unusual that we don't have a single port commissioner in the viewing arena, especially post-COVID, but I'm traveling on family business and we've got some COVID issues with
So,
one of the commissioners. So I just wanted to just go on record to say that we apologize for not being face-to-face with those of you that took the time to show up.
Yeah, apparently we're not post-COVID, so it seems to be sneaking up here and there in families, especially in gatherings over the
files
weekend.
aren't
So.
opening. There they are.
Well, that's a different one.
You sure?
I'll make that one work. That's the PDF.
Okay, hold on, we gotta share it. Where'd it go? There it is. Sorry.
That's okay.
There we go.
Oh. Is this right now? Okay, perfect. I can't see your lovely faces, but I can see your lovely faces on the screen. So thank you for inviting me to share with all of you today about the significant workforce training program that we've developed. First of all, I'm Debbie Granger, and my address is 2620 North Harbor Loop Drive, Suite 26, Bellingham, Washington 98225. And I'm part of the Working Waterfront Coalition that is bringing this program to our community. And I will move down here to the next one. And what am I going to feature here? We're talking about the need that we're addressing, and then we're talking about the coalition's response, and then the bit about the program details and our next steps. And I'll see if I can move this down. Here we go. So what was the need that we're trying to address here? Basically, our members, and you can see we have 140 members in 7 sectors on our waterfront, and they repeatedly tell us that their number one need is a trained workforce. And they desperately need workers with the skills, knowledge, experience, and aptitude to fill their many jobs. And this is the number one factor in them in limiting their potential to stay in business as well as potentially growing. So what did we do to address this need? We basically spent quite a bit of time researching and visiting other programs around the state and even the nation. We were hoping to avoid reinventing the wheel, maybe potentially adapting an existing program to our community. And that journey took us, we had the privilege of meeting hundreds of people, and I put together a spreadsheet, 2-sided spreadsheet. There's about 150 folks here that we had the opportunity to connect with as we were doing this research. But gratefully, we found a program that is a time-tested program that we could adopt to our country or to this region. It's actually in another country. It's 80 miles southwest of here, and it's called the Quadrant Marine Institute in Sydney, BC, Canada. And this is an apprenticeship training program that trains marine service technicians. It's been around for 25 years, and it has succeeded in professionalizing the whole marine service technician sector. And, what is this program? Now I'm going to explain a little bit about the Quadrant program. Like I said, it trains marine service technicians, and it was developed and led and continuously upgraded and improved by industry experts. The career marine service technicians is is defined as a skilled tradesperson who, I've got this group over here, I'm gonna delete you guys so I can see this. Skilled tradesperson who builds, refits, maintains, surveys, and repairs vessels up to 150 feet. So they are commercial vessels and recreational vessels. They work in marinas and boatyards and so on. Do I need to put them back up, Rob? No. Okay. This is a 4-year, robust, sequential, progressive, comprehensive program. It focuses on the whole boat instruction in 12 marine subjects, and then how each of them fit together. And then additionally, each apprentice has the potential of specializing in up to 6 specialized areas via the Advanced Competency Program. And this whole program leads to journey level certification, plus additional industry certifications, ABYC and NMEA, and the NMEA I know is the Marine Electronics Association. I'll get the other one in a second here, but let me go back, go down. And this apprenticeship program is an earn while you learn model, which allows workers to log their hours. They're not having to give up their jobs and pay to go to school. They are earning while they're learning, and they progress up in wages every 6 months. And they're, like I said, progressing towards a certificate program, a journey level. And further, they are supported in the workplace. You're not just hiring somebody and saying you're on your own. They are supported there and earning competencies in the workplace. We already talked about the size of the vessel. It's industry driven. And in addition to the on-the-job support, they are participating in classroom sessions up to 100, no, not up to, they have to meet 144 hours a year of related supplemental instruction. And during COVID, this group moved all the instruction to an online learning capacity or capability. We had the privilege several years ago of taking a field trip up to, or down, I guess, to Quadrant, and we took 10 to 15 people from Whatcom and Skagit County. And then the COVID came in, but I was able to attend between sort of outbreaks of COVID. Last November, I spent 2 days. And the folks on the left here are some of the industries that are supporting this. And then this is a picture of one of their labs and workshops. And it started in a place similar to, let's say, landings at Colony Wharf. It's called Canoe Cove. And then they have a mobile training center or vehicle that bops around the province as well. So what are some of the subjects that they're learning? Let's hope this will work. So this is their website. I did want to say also that if an apprentice feels that they have the competencies in one of these areas, they can challenge it. There is a challenge capability. And I'll accept the cookies. But so here are the subject areas. So they are learning safety, tools, design, installations, composites, metals, wood, paint, electrical, electronics, sailboat rigging, business practice, and that all-important mathematics that lots of folks struggle with. They are also adding a Canvas module. So that program, now how do I get back out of this on this thing here? I think I'll just hit this back and let's see if it takes me back. It did. What were the advantages to us for adopting this Quadrant program? Basically, like I said, it's time tested, it's proven. But if we had to set up our own curriculum, our own program, it would take hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm not teasing about that. I'm not exaggerating. There's a company south of us that thought they would give it a go and set up their own, and they got a grant from the feds for $1.5 million, and they're still not finished. So you have to hire subject matter experts and curriculum developers, then test it and try it. This program is done. It has been vetted and 25 years in process. And they, like I said, they end up with journey level certification. So what have we done to adapt this or adopt this to the United States? Gratefully, it is a blessed occupation by the U.S. Department of Labor. And that is a big deal. That gives us that credibility. Further, in order to bring it to the state of Washington, we had to dance through and participate with layers of rules and regulations with the Washington Apprenticeship and Training Council. And this was well over a year process, but we were gifted or granted a wonderful apprentice consultant, and I don't know if Gary's on the call, he was invited, but he's been a training coordinator for 25 years for the Pipe Fitter Union, but he lives in Blaine, and he was our consultant, and he was with me every step of the way, and it's been wonderful. If you think that, I don't know, let's say the airports have rules and regs, this apprenticeship thing is layered with that. And in order to form this, we needed to form an apprenticeship committee, an official committee, and it had to have equal number of employees and employers, and this group is the driver. They make the decisions. And I went out to all of our Marine Trades members, and I'd go to them and say, do you want to be on the committee? And they'd say, I can't deal with that bureaucracy. Let somebody else do it, and when it's all set, then I'll participate. So the two groups that decided to work through the layers of bureaucracy was Northwest Explorations and Northwest Diesel Power, both their employers and their employees. And I don't know if Bruce Morey is on the call, Andrew Morris, John Nasachuk, and Matt Harden were with us every step. But then once we got that, we did get that provisional certification from the state. Then we needed to get the curriculum from Quadrant, and it's a licensing agreement. They're not just going to give this away. We're the first entity in the United States that they're giving this to or working with, and they wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing. So we had to have that licensing agreement reviewed by attorneys, and I just, a few days ago, got level 1 of this 4-year curriculum, and it is a massive, all those things I was talking about, the first year of a 4-year program, this is year 1. So now we get to dive in and develop the scope and sequence, what's taught, by whom and where and when and so on. And how were we, this coalition, going to manage this? So we formed a 501c3 foundation focused on education and training and maritime heritage. Who's going to be doing this? Initially, I will be the training coordinator, but I'm really eager to hand this off once it gets going. There will be professional instructors for each of those subject areas that we get to connect with. And eventually, we'll have, like other union apprenticeships, an admin person, a student support person, a train-the-trainer mentor, and so on. Benefits. John, are you on the call? John Nasachuk?
Yes, I am, Deb.
Would you enjoy sharing with us a bit about the benefits to the employers and the employees? Is that permissible? Okay. John?
Am I okay to go?
Yes.
I've been involved with this program for many years, and I have seen firsthand the benefit to employers and employees. It's exciting because the employers are able to train workers from absolutely green right through to journeyman status, and train them in the ways of the company, and have the curriculum there to provide the guidelines. As all of you that are on the call are aware, the marine industry is extremely busy, and the shortage of workers started to become very, very clear and very evident in 2008, 2009. And currently the industry is going backwards. We're losing more employees than we're gaining due to folks like myself that are on the tail end of the careers. And so with this program, we're able to start to rebuild the workforce for our marine industry. And for all the years that it never had any kind of certification or any kind of recognition, the industry in British Columbia came together and developed this certification. So for employers, it gives the employers a window of having apprentices, and allows them a lower starting wage to bring people in. And it's a known and proven fact that by the time that the apprentice is into its second half of its second year, that they're actually starting to put pennies into the profit jar, and increases in year 3. And in year 4, it helps the employer pay back their expenses from year 1. And it's a really wonderful to look back and see the process and how it works for employers. And the goal is for the employers then to be good employers, and that the employees then would offer loyalty to the employer and stay through once they've reached their journeyman status. To employees, it gives an opportunity for any of the people that love the waterfront, love the ocean, love the lakes, and it gives them to have a really good and well paid career in the industry. These are the folks that, like righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, they like to fix things, and they love the marine industry. University might not be for them, and we look, those of us in the industry, we look for those kids in school that just might not have a preordained path, that might be a little bit on the edge and need something very practical to exercise their skill sets with. And we've seen many that struggle with grade 12 math and struggle with some of the harder subjects that have come through this program, and are wonderful wage earners. They've got families, and they're very successful in life by going through the apprenticeship program and getting a professional brush on their passion. So it's a great entry-level career for kids out of high school or people that want a change. And we would love to see this program really take hold in Bellingham, and we would love to see it start to turn out 15 to 20 fresh employees per year to help rebuild companies such as ours, to strengthen our service department and other service providers in the Bellingham, Markham area that need technicians to keep, whether it's their fish boats running, whether they're crew boats running, water taxis, or pleasure boats. And so very excited about what the benefits of this program will bring to employers and to employees.
Thank you, John. John's been right with us, as those other 3 or 4 people have too. So one of the big next steps that we're dealing with is funding. This is a non-union program, and so therefore we do not have the benefit of a well-established training trust, and we also don't have the benefit of a government entity such as they have in Canada or in Australia or in Europe. In BC, they have the BC ITA, Industry Training Authority, that provides a stipend for each apprentice to the apprenticeship program. We're basically on our own. So each participating employer will pay a stipend. We're researching grants and filling them out like crazy. We are grateful that Washington Sea Grant came alongside and offered us a program development grant. I just applied for another big one from the state April 1st, and we just haven't heard yet, and I'm grateful to the port for your letter of support. We also are looking to individuals and entities for contributions, and recently the Port of Bellingham, Don Goldberg, gave us a good chunk, a small chunk from his budget, but we also at the Tide to Table asked for contributions, and we were grateful for that, for everybody who was attending. But the sustainability is a big issue because, like I said, we are on our own. Our next steps, now that we've got the story, now that we've got the curriculum, now that we got provisional approval from the states, from the state of Washington apprenticeship group, we can now start to tell the story. We can develop a website, we can go door to door to all of our employers and go to the high schools and reach out to the public and fill this puppy. We are planning to launch in September, and this shows you sort of the progression of our launch plan. This September, the program will go from September to May because June, July, and August are not good months for the maritime sector. Everybody's gone fishing or the boats are out. So we'll start this fall with 15. Next fall, we'll have a new group of level 1, 15 people, and progress up to, in 25, 26, we'll have up to 60 apprentices in this professional training program, and I keep going the wrong way. Additionally, there's all these logistics that we get to dance with and deal with, the schedule, getting the instructors, getting equipment, supplies, materials, facilities. And I have had the privilege, like I said, of collaborating with so many people, and there's so many entities dealing with this. There's the State Core Plus Maritime that is 900 students this year. We're able to earn basically high school and college credit for what they do in the high school in this vetted program, and even students are able to earn college credit for their commercial fishing experience through this. So I think Seaholm High School, Carrie told me today that they're planning to adopt this in 2023, and Lummi Nation High School has it, but also this whole menu of training options. And I don't look at these as competition, I look at them as collaboration and a menu for students interested in working in, on, and around the water with that love. One of the specific requests, we will need a classroom lab space similar to the one I showed you that Quadrant has. And some of the businesses have offered this, but they may not be large enough. And when we first presented this or mentioned this to a couple commissioners 3 years ago, one of them told us their dream was that potentially Port of Bellingham could be a maritime technical training center. And I don't know if the TDC, the Technology Development Center, is still available, but that seems like a ready-made classroom space. And I would love to work with you to talk about renting that facility. And because I think it has an LCD projector overhead, seems like it would be great. And also, a lot of these companies want to do short courses and upgrade their skills. So with that, I am very grateful to all of you for your patience as we explain this program and support us. And we're, like I said, we're the first entity to bring this to the states, and they valued us and believe in us and believe that we have the potential. So we're grateful to all of you. Are there any questions?
Well, thank you, Debbie. That was a very enlightening presentation. I'm glad to finally hear that things are on the on the road. I certainly would hope that the Portobello can help in some manner with a location for those classrooms. I'm sure work with Rob and staff. We can hopefully put something together, because I'd certainly like to see the Port of Bellingham and the participants located in Bellingham be the hub for this to go other places. Thank our neighbors to the southwest for creating this. I think it's a great thing. A couple of questions I have.
Sure.
With regards to the age that someone can start this, or are we looking at freshmen in high school being able to with these programs, or are we looking at juniors and seniors, or what do we have an age cutoff for someone to be in this program?
Well, that's a very good question. Per the state apprenticeship program, they must be 18, and but that's the only requirement. So what I was talking to you about was that Core Plus Maritime program that's offered in the high school. The vision is that that could maybe be these sort of pre-apprenticeship programs. So some of those competencies that they learn in the high school could then serve as, they might not need to spend so much time. They might have a checkoff. They might be able to challenge some of the subject areas. But because this is a state registered apprenticeship, the requirement is that they need to be 18. And I think it's L&I and all of that. But there are pre-apprenticeship opportunities.
Okay, that'd be really good, because as everyone knows in all the marine trade sectors, time is of the essence for people with skills to keep the maritime industry moving. And in your website, hopefully the port could assist you with the website stuff if need be. I would hope that we can help in some manners with many of the things you're faced with there. And I would like you to ask everyone to ask us when you need something. We either can or we can't, but we certainly will do our best to can. So with that, Commissioner Shepard, you have some questions?
Debbie, thank you so much. This is something we've been looking forward to and asking for. And, I don't take it lightly that you stepped up and responded. This was a lot of effort, a lot of bureaucratic work for you and your partners who took this on. It probably was mind-numbingly tedious at times, but you persevered, and this is going to be a lasting program that will benefit our community for years to come. This is the kind of backfilling that we've been needing for this industry, and it really comes at a critical time. So I appreciate that, and I would like us to think about using some of our time while we're in Olympia to help advocate for funding. It seems like there needs to be some amount of permanent funding or ongoing funding that could benefit this type of initiative. And if it's been vetted through the state system, it's gotten all their blessing and approval, then we have an opportunity to connect with them about ways to financially support it as well. So I know we're having a presentation on our legislative outlook later on today, and we'll keep looking at opportunities for us to communicate this message to our partners in Olympia, because I think it would have strong support there as well.
Michael, you've hit on a
go ahead.
You've hit on a key point. I did reach out. A lot of the people on the list are actually state legislators and senators, and they're massively supported. But because this was a short session this year, it wasn't a possibility. I mean, it wasn't an option to get funded this year. But I've already on the docket for July and August with Senator Kaiser, who got Senate Bill 5600 passed. I'm dancing really hard with all these folks to try to figure that piece out. And it is frustrating because nationally, they speak about the power of apprenticeships all the time, but they're all union-based, which is tough when you're non-union and you don't have a union training trust behind you. You are basically on your own. So any help, my dears, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think this is just the kind of thing that we can, and for those who don't know, when we go to lobby in Olympia, we work with the city of Bellingham and Whatcom County to develop a joint kind of docket of items that we are all collectively supporting. And it's very effective for our legislators to see and hear from us in that way. So I'd like to offer to help to connect some of those dots and be that partner. Otherwise, you mentioned the program at Lummi. I have the opportunity to serve on the board for the Lummi Nation's Marine Trades Education Program, which happens at the Lummi Tribal School. And they are doing exactly this pre-apprentice work. And so forming those connections so those graduates of their program are able to walk in and take the next step into employment, especially employment that comes with apprenticeship, is just creating that really strong pathway that we need to get students early on, pique their interest, pique their skills, and help them connect the dots so they're able to stay in our community and be successful here. So I know I've mentioned them before to you, and I think you guys already had an opportunity to connect with Mike Baker.
I'm on their advisory board as well. So I'll be
Great.
working with you. So it's an amazing program. And I think they're also going to be at the job fair in a couple weeks.
They are. Yeah.
Good.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you again. And that's it for me.
Commissioner Bell.
Yeah, I won't take up your time with too many more platitudes. You've heard from the other two. I agree wholeheartedly. The only thing I want to say is from a marketing standpoint, hey, John, you talk about kids being challenged in math and going into this program. I want to remind you that only half of the people who get a college degree actually use that degree. And every young person that I know that went into some kind of apprenticeship or trade is now out earning their peers who went on to get a college degree. And that's just anecdotal because it's my little world, but don't sell this short. This is not for kids who are struggling with math. This is for anybody who wants to make a good living right out of high school without being $100,000 in debt. And some of them are the most talented individuals I know. So this is a necessary thing for our community, and I'm supportive completely.
Thank you. I wanted
Thank
to,
you, commissioners. Go ahead, Debbie.
sorry, I wanted to dub this one. Several years ago when we did the fundraising for the BTC Fisheries and Aquaculture Program, at the grand opening, Jay Bornstein stood up and said, this program is the best of, this was his words, boots and brains. And I thought that was a perfect words, but I've added another word. I say this is the best, this program that we're developing here in Whatcom County is the best of boots, brains, and boats. We're gonna keep our boats afloat and keep them safe and have Whatcom County be the center of all of this kind of professional training. So thank you, gentlemen. Any more questions?
Thank you, Debbie. And it truly is the foundation of things to have people with hands on. And as Commissioner Bell stated, you don't have to go to college to have a good job and be a good part of the country. So thank you.
Thank you.
Gary, I think we have.
Yeah,
she's got to have a joke though.
We'll see. Tamara Sobjak is going to give a Q1 financial update.
She's digging through the joke pile. I can see her grinning.
I don't know why you do this to yourself. Let me just get my screen shared here. Okay, I don't know what I just did. I don't know what I'm doing. Hold on. What is
Hey,
this?
Tamara, I want to remind you that the pressure for a joke you put on yourself, had you not started this tradition, we would not have put the pressure back on you to continue in that vein. So this is kind of all on you.
The expectation's there now.
All right. So what do you call a dog with no legs? Doesn't matter, he's not coming anyway. For the record, everyone laughed. All right, so.
Okay.
All right, in all seriousness, Tamara Sobczak, CFO, Port of Bellingham.
Are you sure you're not a dad? That sounds like a dad joke.
I'm a jack of all trades. I can be a dad. So I've got the first quarter 2022 financial information prepared, and I'll just dive right in. Spoiler alert, it's looking promising. So, and I like to start with good news. If I can get my thing going. We'll start with revenues. First quarter of 2022 came in almost $13 million in revenues compared to 7.5 same time period last year.
Tamara, I'm not able to see the slide.
Oh,
Neither am I.
oh, okay, let me try again.
We see the main page is what we see, Tamara.
Okay,
What?
let me try again.
No, we got a little white guy in the middle with a black screen.
Can you see
There
it
we
now?
go.
Okay, great.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
First quarter 2022 revenues came in almost $13 million compared to 7.5 the same time frame last year. Over $1 million of that is due to operating, and most of that is from the airport. So the airport's really starting to look up. But also marinas and real estate also showed some growth. Non-operating revenues, 2.2 last year, 6.3 this year, and that's due to about $4 million in FAA construction grants. So not only are operations picking up, but our construction activity as well. Looking at the expenses, just over $9.1 million this year compared to 8.6 last year, and obviously we expect a little bit of increase for inflation. And that those expenses really increased across all divisions, but most of the increases came from the airport as we started to ramp operations up, back to normal. We had a January storm event, so we had some de-icing, supplies to purchase, parking expenses, repairs and maintenance, just the standard things that you would see. So going into a deeper dive, this is the aviation division. We budgeted 2022 similar to 2021, just due to the unknown timing of the border and additional flights. But we exceeded our budget for the first 3 months by over $500,000. And that's mainly due to concession fees and parking, so just the added passenger count through that facility. Expenses, we anticipated higher costs because we knew we were going to start to ramp up for increased operations, and we were able to stay within the overall budget, even with the increased marketing, repairs and maintenance, and those operating supplies. So moving over to the marinas, nothing really significant to report here. Revenues and expenses are close to budget, but this is a seasonal operation, and so we'd expect to see all of that level out by the end of the year. The shipping terminal looks kind of ugly, but it's not. Most of the revenue for 2021 was June through September, and in 2021, the graph looked exactly the same as it looks now. And we ended 2021 better than budget. So we expect 2022 to track the same as 2021 and end up just fine. And the variable costs, the expenses are a little lower than budget because we have some variable costs built in. That means as cargo moves across our facility, there's increased expenses for longshore labor and things like that. The cruise terminal, also no notable departures from our budget. Kind of the same story as the marinas. We might see an uptick in the summer, but as long as there are no surprises with the ferry, we expect predictable revenues and expenses. In real estate, I'm a broken record, no variances in either the revenue or expenses from budget. With occupancy remaining so high, revenues and expenses are really, really predictable. And all of that leads to a solid balance sheet. And I say this every quarter. I say, oh, we have a strong balance sheet, we have a solid balance sheet strong. But it really is thanks to a variety of factors. We have great customer service, keeping our current tenants and customers in place. We have solid budgeting and cost controls. We have good partners in our grant funding agencies, such as the FAA, who came in a big way over the last couple of years. And then, careful consideration of our taxing and debt capacities, just being really mindful of the big picture and purposeful in our decisions, and that starts with the commission and goes all the way through staff. So this is great news. So before I move on, any questions about the financials so far?
Mr. Shepherd,
None at the moment.
Commissioner Bell.
Nope.
I have none.
Okay, great. So moving on, the commission has asked for a variety of updates on a quarterly basis. So we have this is investments. We've got about $9.5 million in federal securities, earning us just under 1.7% in interest, and the remainder of our cash balances in the LGIP earning just under 0.3%. But the good news is I'm seeing interest rates go up, and there's probably going to be some opportunities for some investments in the very near future. So I'm hopeful that this will change. Risk management, so insurance activities. We have one open claim against the port. This hasn't changed. It remains ongoing, and our legal team and insurance carriers are handling this claim. Looking at the stormwater program, again, good news, both permits are in compliance. At the airport, full consistent attainment was achieved last quarter in 2021, and so there's no sampling required for another year. And then the shipping terminal sample results were within permit limits. Number of injuries, we did have 2 incidents to report. One was an injury with no time loss, and then one was an illness with 5 days of time loss. But our safety committee continues to meet regularly to discuss any concerns or topics related to safety and to address any preventable incidents. And then finally, public records requests. So we're tracking the same number of requests year over year. The first quarter was about 40 as well in 2021, but staff time in 2022 was 185 hours of staff time to fill those requests. And in 2021, it was about 40. So even though the number is about the same, the requests are more burdensome lately and just more time consuming to compile.
Commissioners, sorry to butt in, but what we're seeing here is almost a weaponization of the Public Records Act, where we upset a local business person and they immediately started doing public records asks that were not even related to what they're upset about, asking for all emails from certain individuals, all emails regarding commissioners, not specifying dates, not specifying topics. And those things get very time consuming for our records officers. So that's why you see a huge jump in the hours, but a decrease in the number of requests. The requests coming from that one individual are just very burdensome.
And no matter the request, we still have a legal requirement to respond to those. But Marlene has been great, continues to keep us on track and compliant with all of our legal requirements. And that is it for me. Are there any questions I can answer?
Well, as usual, your presentation is impeccable, and I commend you and our director and our entire staff at the efforts that have been taken in the last 3 years in particular to make your presentation what it looks like with the numbers. So thank you to everyone. And the joke was good.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Bell.
Yeah, and I just think it's a remarkable achievement by this port that our accident rate is as low as it is, excuse me, internally, and that we haven't had any external accidents. So it shows a well-run port and that we're conscious of safety and taking care of business. So well done.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I'm pleased that we've got good numbers across the board here. We were able to maintain those water samplings all within limits, even though we've had some pretty major rain events and kind of a tumultuous weather year. And so good work on our team, and I appreciate all the info.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Carrie, I think you could introduce the next host.
Sure.
Entertainer,
Mike
whatever.
Hogan is going to do an introduction for the legislative update.
Good
Is this
afternoon.
Mike and his traveling legislation show?
Good afternoon. Boy, yeah, and I don't have a joke even, so I'm in trouble. Maybe a song and dance. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Michael Hogan, Public Affairs Administrator. I'm pleased to welcome Tom McBride and Ben Buchholz, who will give a recap of the legislative session. As you know, there are lobbyists down in Olympia, but before I do, first of all, just a huge thank you to our legislative delegation in the 40th and 42nd. They did a terrific job for us this year, and they're always available and well respected down in Olympia. Senator Sefcik came on late into the game, and he did a really good job about just reaching out to us and figuring out what our priorities are and our interests. And so congratulations to him for keeping that dialogue open and doing a really good job representing Whatcom County. I'd also like to thank our partners at the city and county. As you know, we have a joint legislative agenda for many of our issues. Also the Washington Public Ports Association, the Washington Economic Development Association, people at individual ports. There's a lot of people that work behind the scenes on a lot of our priorities. And also to you, commissioners, you did a great job supporting our interests in Olympia. Lots of different things. Commissioner Briscoe, from meeting with the head of the Derelict vessel program to Commissioner Shepard testifying down in Olympia to Commissioner Bell, talking with the different members of the elected officials down in Olympia. It really helps. It takes a village. We have, there's a lot of different representatives and senators down in Olympia, and so amplifying that voice is really important. We did have some big wins down in Olympia this year. Our top priority is always MOTCA because the cleanup funds are so important. There was a legislation this year that was a carryover. It was unintended, but it required, it was a requirement for local governments to obtain all permits for a project within 1 year of getting grants, which, as you know, just wasn't feasible. So that was a huge issue. It impacted about $11.6 million in cleanup grants for projects that are really important for our community. And because we had such a big stake in it, we were running point on it for the Washington Public Ports Association, and translates to that 11.6 is $23.2 million in cleanup work that wouldn't get done if we weren't able to change that. So that was a huge win, being able to do that. And when that legislation started, it started in the Senate with, and so having Senator Lovelet in that committee, talking to the committee chair, telling him how important it was, getting it out of that committee, passing the Senate, going to the House, all the way to the House Rules Committee, where Representative Ramel is in the Rules Committee working to make sure that legislation got out of that Rules Committee. So just our delegation really working hard for us, so a big thank you. Other big wins, the Derelict Vessel Removal Program. There was a change that's going to add about $7.5 million per biennium to that program. So as you know, it's a huge priority for us, and so having a well-funded program really supports our needs. Broadband, there was about $100 million in grants and loans from the legislature, resources for improving digital equity, improving ports access to Public Works Board's funds, revising the definition of broadband service, increased service speed. So lots of movement on broadband. And then there was also a capital appropriation for Alcoa for the aluminum smelter for about $10 million. So lots of big wins for Whatcom County. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom and Ben, who will give you the details, and really pleased to have them down working for the port and the city and the county, doing a great job in Olympia. So gentlemen, thank you. Take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Tom McBride here for McBride Public Affairs, along with Ben Buckholtz. We really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today. At the outset, I do want to thank you, Mike, for that overview, because the appreciation you've expressed and explanation of the team that it takes to get work done in Olympia is really important. And we appreciate the commissioners and staff and, of course, the delegation from the 40th and 42nd. So thank you all for that. We have had some good successes this year. And I also just want to say quickly that it was, really appreciate Debbie's presentation too about the Northwest Maritime Apprenticeship Program and the Working Waterfront Coalition, because that is really building on an important expansion of those programs that the legislature has approved in the past few years. So that's a very exciting development, and really applaud the work that's going on with the port. So what I'll do is I'll start, give it just some big picture observations and sort of some context to what we experienced in Olympia this year. And then I'll turn it over to Ben to drill down on some of the particular bills that we're working on specifically for the port, and in some cases for the coalition, as Mike, you referenced. First of all, it's a democratically controlled legislature. As you know, the House is controlled by the Democrats 57-41, the Senate 28-21, and the governor's mansion has Governor Jay Inslee in it in his third term. It is important to note the 2022 elections are coming up, and it's really a bit remarkable right now, because by my count, or our count, I think we're about at 25 people voluntarily leaving the legislature, whether it's for retirement or to run for a different office. But that's a big number. And then on top of that, we'll have all of the House members running for re-election, all 98, and then half of the senators, so 25 of the 49, as well as a special election for the Secretary of State's office that was filled by appointment of Governor Inslee by Senator Steve Hobbs. So he will be running in a special election to see if he can hold on to that seat, or if someone else will take it over. The 2022 session was not as we originally anticipated. We thought we'd be it'd be more of an in-person experience, but it ended up being mostly virtual. And that was largely on account of the COVID-19 numbers and the concern about bringing people back, and not just the public, but bringing back members and their ability to stay healthy and stay on the floor. Now, there were a number of members who were on the floor. The galleries were closed for a big chunk of session. Near the end of session, they did open up the galleries and allow the public in, which was great to get back in there and be able to interface with the legislators one-on-one. But it looked a lot more like 2020 than we had hoped. 2021 than we had hoped. But I do think we're optimistic about 2023 looking more like we are accustomed to. And of course, that will allow all of you to continue your work in person in Olympia, if at all possible, because you do that regularly and it has great results. So we thank you for that. They did finish on time in a 60-day session, started on January 20, finished on January 10, finished on March 10, 60-day session. The governor's action, or period for action on the bills, ended on April 2nd. And then since that time, there's always a little bit of a lull after session ends and legislators get away and consider what they're going to work on over the interim. But it is clearly picking up, both on the campaign side and on the legislative policy side, as they begin to put into place their work groups and task forces and public hearing schedules in preparation for 2023. So that is ramping up quickly. In terms of the work that they did, the biggest theme, I would say, is what they have to do every year, and that's work on the budgets. This short session is the year for supplemental budgets. They modify, as you're familiar with from your own work, but they modify the biennial budgets that are passed during the even during the odd long session years. And this was a little unusual because they did the transportation, capital, and operating. But what was unusual was the extraordinary increase in revenue projections from just 1 year prior. You look back at March 2021, and of course we were in the middle of the pandemic, some pretty dismal projections for revenue, and we were down considerably. And just 1 year later, projections were up about $10 billion over the year prior. Now, I will make a point to say some of those dollars were federal dollars. It's important to note that. But that being said, still, the economy in the state, in a sales-based economy like we have, really returned quickly. So they were able to add about $5 billion to a $59 billion biennial budget passed just last year, which took it to about $64 billion. So there was quite a bit of additional expenditure. And of course, a lot of that was to try to help the recovery following the pandemic. They worked hard to try to put it into investments that were not recurring type of programmatic expenses that would have to be funded in future years. That's hard to do, but they didn't want to count on those extraordinary projection increases in case we ran into a recession going forward. The capital budget was passed, about a $1.5 billion budget, and the transportation supplemental budget was passed too. It's important that we note, and this is good news, transportation revenue package was passed, about a $17 billion package over 16 years. And what was unusual about that revenue package, because they don't occur that often, as you know, probably every 5 to 6 years, a couple times a decade, the nickel package, the 9.5 cent package, et cetera. This one did not rely on bonding. A considerable amount of that operation, those operating dollars were allocated to transportation, which was very unusual. And since they didn't rely on bonding, it really was not the traditional bipartisan package that we're familiar with. And so, it'll be important to get back, I think, to that bipartisan approach to transportation revenue in the future. And we're going to be talking a lot about it when you consider the decreasing gas tax revenue. One thing we really focused on with the transportation revenue package was the anticipation. One of the pieces of the proposal was a fuel export tax, which of course was of great concern to the Whatcom County area with its 2 refineries. And that was changed. It was about $100 million a year allocated toward the package. What they did instead was to replace it with about $57 million from the Public Works Assistance account annually and $57 million from the operating budget annually to replace that export tax proposal, which caused a lot of concern, not just in Whatcom County, but also in our neighboring states like Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska, some of the people who would have had to pay for it. Other themes, police reform continued to be an issue. They came back and made some changes relating to the standard for use of force, for example, relaxation of restrictions on the use of military equipment, for example. They also came back in right out of the chute and modified the Long-Term Care Act that took effect on January 1, 2022, in terms of for those who hadn't found their own coverage for long-term care, employers would have had to take a deduction out of their wages. And what they did was they delayed that law about 18 months out to July 1, 2023. But it did cause some complication because the law had already taken effect before that extension was made. They tried to handle some of that through messaging with employers, et cetera. But if employers did deduct out those that tax, that fee, they did have to return it to the workers because of that delay in the implementation date. They also expanded some of the exemptions that were available for example, non-residents who worked in Washington State, maybe coming over from Oregon or Idaho. There were some exemptions added to the program, which was really an equity fairness issue. Public health was the last big theme I'll mention. There was some work done on climate as well, technology, privacy, but with the COVID-19 pandemic, public health was still first and foremost on the minds of the legislature. So at that point, what I'll do is turn it over to Ben to cover some of the individual bills that we've been working on for you.
That sounds great. Thanks, Tom. I was sort of chuckling when Mike was giving his presentation and introducing us, because he basically stole all my materials. So it's been covered. So I was going to lead off with a joke. Why is it so easy to weigh fish? Because they have their own scales. All right. So
you just set the bar for Tamara. She's got to come up with one now. Good one, Ben.
I'll start with House Bill 1700, which is the derelict vessel removal bill. That bill, basically what it did was it didn't set any new restrictions on or establish rules on what vessels would be removed. What it did do was it moved 25% of that 0.5% market value. It moved 25% of that money to the derelict vessel account. So basically, like we talked about in our legislative preview before session started with you guys, basically it will beef up that funding in the derelict vessel account. So they'll be able to apply that money and hopefully, move more derelict vessels out of waterways. I found it sort of interesting that was one that we highlighted before session, and then we're able to see that thing all the way through from start to finish. It's always beautiful when a plan comes together like that. So the other one I'll mention, which Mike did a great job describing to you, and he also did an excellent job during session for the Port of Bellingham and through the Ports Association. Mike did an excellent job, sending information when necessary, working the bill, having people call other legislators that were in need of some information. That's Senate Bill 5895. That's the MACA fix that Mike talked about. That was a real team effort. I know we were, Mike said we were out front, and that was probably true, but there was also several other major ports that were out there working, as well as Victoria Lincoln's team at the Port Association. They did an excellent job working that bill. Again, start to finish, it was one of those bills where we didn't even have a sponsor the week before session started. So that's a beautiful plan that came together also. Basically what the detail in that bill is that it removes language that says you have to have all of your permits in hand 1 year before receiving your grants. And so that language was removed by that bill. But again, I just want to really emphasize that the team effort, and it was also Mike did an excellent job representing the Port of Bellingham in Olympia. I'm just going to mention a couple others. There were a handful, at least half a dozen broadband bills introduced this session. A couple of them made it across the finish line. In gross second substitute, House Bill 1723. That changed the definition of low income. It made broadband more easily affordable and available to low income households. So a really great bill. It will expand who can access broadband and will make it more available to low income households. The other one I wanted to mention was the definition of broadband, which was Senate Bill 5715. That was sponsored by a Senator, Lisa Wellman from Mercer Island. And she's brought this bill forward a couple different years. And this was the year that it all came together for that bill. It basically, what it does is it changes the definition of broadband so that it increases the service speeds, and it basically funds and supports the change to glass fiber technology. So I'm sure there's somebody at the Port of Bellingham much smarter than myself that could explain glass fiber technology to everybody. So I'll leave that up to them. But that bill made it across the finish line, and again, a very good bill. Team effort on most of these bills. It wasn't just one port out in front pushing things. It was a team effort. Tom already talked about the long-term care delay, so I won't focus on that. there were two bills that passed to execute the delay. And those were the first bills passed in session. It was the fastest bills I've ever seen. And Tom's been there way longer than I have been, but those were the two fastest bills fly through session in a short session that I've seen before. They were on the governor's desk, I think, within about 14 days of session starting, maybe even faster. So that was pretty impressive to watch, and also a very necessary delay in most folks' eyes. Also wanted to mention, and very timely with the presentation tonight about apprenticeship programs, I wanted to mention Senate Bill 5600, 5600. That was Senator Karen Kaiser bill, and basically what it does is it funds existing apprenticeship programs so that they can expand and grow, so that we can get more people through those approved apprenticeship programs. And a lot of folks at the refineries were interested in that bill. I know that's a big deal to the Port of Bellingham. It was a very big deal to all of the major refineries in your area. There are several apprenticeship programs that operate with open shop and contractors and within the refinery itself, where they have training programs. And 5600 was, at first we were concerned about it. There was some concern, I think, and then that sort of grew into the fact that there was funding there that would expand the size of those programs to include more people, and the outreach will be much better also. And I think that ties right into the presentation from earlier tonight about trying to get more folks from high school directly into those apprenticeship training programs. So that bill will help that situation. And I think I'll sort of end there. Those were the major victories that we had. The one that got stuck again this year that I'll mention is House Bill 1333. That was the 0.09 tax extension for economic development. The city of Bellingham, Whatcom County, the port, all use that 0.09 tax money to do economic development. It's about, I would say it's a large chunk. I won't put a number on it. It's a large chunk of money that goes into economic development for Whatcom County and the city. And that bill, again, it would be an extension of the tax approval for another out through 2054. That bill, we've run that bill the last few years. And again, we ran into a situation where we had, I think, a lack of time at the end of session. There were just a lot of big things big issues moving at the end of session. And so that bill got held up, but we are already, the coalition that works around that bill, we're already working on it again. We started meeting 2 weeks ago, and we're going to get this thing across the finish line. That's just one issue that we didn't get done this year, short session. And next year's a new year, and we're already, prepping it and having conversations with legislators that said maybe they didn't understand it as well as they needed to vote for it. And so we're going to get that thing passed. But I think I'll leave it there. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Hey, thank you, Tom, Ben. Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Bell? Did I lose?
Commissioner, we can't hear you. He's talking, but we can't hear you.
Yeah. He's unmuted, but we can't hear him.
Commissioner Shepard, go ahead until he figures it out. How's that?
Okay. Couple questions. We saw funding for broadband this past year, and we're trying to use the crystal ball and determine is that funding going to continue to be available in the future, or when are we going to run dry on this interest in funding this? We continue to have a significant need. We're spending a lot of port resources and our collaborations with the PUD to put all the mechanisms in place to expand our broadband network. It's essential that we continue to see the funding coming through the broadband office and the CURB board because we've made such excellent use out of that. But we do realize that shiny objects are only shiny for so long, and then people move on and funders move on to the next shiny thing. And trying to figure out, especially if that 0.09 money is in jeopardy, we've got to make sure that we're able to utilize funding in as quickly as possible and strike while the iron is hot and the funding is flowing in Olympia.
Well, Ben, you may have something to add here too, but I would say at the outset, I think the good news is broadband is, I think, recognized as much as ever right now as an important issue that goes to a lot of considerations, including equity and fairness and making sure that everyone has access to this essential and necessary utility, really. So I think that's an evolution, of course, over the last number of years. And certainly the investment has been behind it. But what I would caution against is the fact that, this is a supplemental budget. Next year, there's a new biennial budget. There's no reason to think that they would reverse course. But if there are fiscal pressures, or if interest goes elsewhere, it could be affected, the broadband funding. So bottom line, I think it's something we need to consistently work on to keep their attention on it and explain the needs for continued funding.
Hey, sorry guys. Speaking of service speeds, I'm having internet issues. So I turned my video off to try to speed that up. But I missed most of the question and conversation. But I will just add about broadband and the economic development money, 0.09 money, is that that definition that Whatcom County is under, that impacts Port Bellingham, obviously, that doesn't expire until 2024. So we have a couple more years left to work that issue. It also impacts 12 other counties and local governments. So we are not alone. And like I said before, that coalition has already started meeting again, which is extremely early right after session, to start working an issue for the next session. However, it is very important, and we do need to keep that money coming for economic development. And I think Tom nailed the broadband funding part of the question very well. That yes, that is a shiny object. However, with the broadband office and with all the interest from different legislators across the state, that's not an issue that's going to fall out of good favor anytime soon.
Okay, good to hear. Well, we'll keep up the pressure and make sure we continue to talk about this and the importance in our community when we're in Olympia, and also that 0.09 money, because that really is a foundation of how our county considers economic development opportunities. And so knowing that there's a timeline ahead means that we should be able to get our other partners on board with putting that front and center as well. Okay, well, thanks. And then, I appreciate you listening in to Debbie's presentation, just thinking about ways that we can connect an opportunity around that marine trades funding for apprenticeships. It seems like kind of a unique need that might have a unique funding solution. I'm not very familiar with those kind of pots of money that might be able to be accessed, but we should think a little bit more on that because it is such a unique opportunity there. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
Mr. Bell, are you there now?
Still not hearing anything.
Oh. Okay, well, Tom, Ben, thank you. Everything you spoke to was important to the Port Whatcom County and all our residents. You guys do some great work there. We really appreciate having you guys there with your finger on the pulse of what's going on, and don't hesitate to let us know what we need to do to help make things happen. So, thank you, gentlemen.
We will. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
So I think we have 2 action items to move to, but I'm thinking maybe we need to take, Michael, do you think we need about a 10-minute break here?
Yeah,
Okay,
we take a
let's
break.
make sure we get Commissioner Bell connected, and we'll take a short break.
Yeah, if we can take
That's
a
what I was
break,
thinking. Maybe we get him connected.
if we take a break, I'll work with Ken to get him connected.
Okay, I'm what are we at here? We're at 5:30. Let's go with 5:50. We're back online.
Sounds good.
That okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna recess for 10 minutes, 12 minutes here.
Can you unmute us? Are you there, Ken?
Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Good to have you back.
I couldn't even.
Hey, we're going to mute, and then we'll unmute, but you should stay unmuted.
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, very good.
Just confirm my mic is working now.
Okay, it's 5:50, so I'd like to call the meeting back to order.
Can you confirm my mic is working, Bobby?
Yes, Ken, we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you, Ken. Okay, we have a couple of presentations, so Carrie, if you please.
Sure,
Or
authorize.
action items, I should say.
Okay. Authorize executive director to execute an authorization to proceed for Hardcourt's proposed projects number 3 and 4 within the Waterfront District Master Development Area. Brian Gowron.
Thank you, Carrie. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Gowron, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. So this item is related to our ongoing work in the Waterfront District with Harcourt under our Master Development Agreement, or MDA. And this is what we're currently calling projects 3 and 4, which is their next submittal of development projects. So going to walk through a few things. First, just a kind of a quick kind of process reminder. As you know, back in October of last year, Port and Harcourt agreed to amend the Master Development Agreement. A couple major things came out of that. One was, of course, we changed the overall layout of the MDA area and where Harcourt has exclusive rights for development. We updated their project schedule, or the master development schedule, which required this submittal specifically for projects 3 and 4 to be submitted a project concept memo, which is what I'll walk through here, by March 31st of 2021. And they hit that date. We got the submittal, and we'll walk through that today. And then the other major part was it revised the overall project approval process. We had some lessons learned from the previous condominium development, really kind of how we went through the project concept, sold them the property, then they started permitting, went through changes because of the permitting process, all legitimate changes, but it was kind of clunky, we realized, and it didn't provide the assurance to the port or to Harcourt or the city kind of on how that project approval was done. It could have been done better. So I'm going to go through kind of where we're at on that. So underlined here is the project concept design submittal with the star next to it. That's where we're at right now. So we're just in the first very early phases of a project approval process. When we walk through this, the process, the first step is for the port to consider an authorization to proceed, which is the action that's before you tonight. That is really just the port giving a general head nod that we've reviewed this. The project fits with the concepts that were anticipated in the sub-area plan. No giant red flags, and it's something that, yeah, feel free to go forward and start the more detailed work on that. After pending commission approval with an authorization to proceed, then Harcourt would start the more detailed land use permitting with the city and design review, and that includes a public process as well. That will probably result in some changes to the concept. More revisions and detail will be built into it. Then Harcourt will come back with a project development design submittal based on that feedback from the city. That will again come to the commission. We'll have an update on how that project changed, what's new, where it's going, and pending commission approval of that process. Then we'll start the development of a parcel for sale. Harcourt will then move forward and do the detailed building permits and getting that process through the city. There will likely be a few changes that will come out of that application process. And then finally, when they have all their permits in hand and they have their financing in place and a detailed project construction schedule, then that final project memorandum will come back to the port for final approval and consideration. That's when we would then pull the trigger on a property sale, and they would initiate project construction. So again, we looked at this, anticipate this is probably a 1.5 to 2 year process. So we're very early in those initial steps, and that's kind of reflected in the level of detail that's in the submittals that they are included in this first design concept. That being said, it really could tell us a lot of work went into it. Probably one of the best things that we've gotten from Harcourt at this level, at this stage of a project, as far as level of detail, thoughtfulness put into it. I do think a lot of lessons learned from everybody on how those initial projects kind of went through the process. So I'm going to go ahead and just have a few slides that show the images of from the submittal, and then happy to address any questions you have. So for project location, we're calling these projects 3 and 4 currently. There probably will get some other name applied to them in the future from Harcourt, but it's essentially 2 approximately 90 square foot buildings on a shared podium with parking below that podium, located on the corner of Granary Avenue and Laurel Street. So this is the southern portion building of their condominiums that are currently under construction. Here's the board mill building, and it really is these projects in blue. It would also, of course, include construction of their access roads, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well as a few other elements. But that's the location. It anticipates both buildings would be about 6-story buildings. They would meet all the building height requirements and view corridor requirements from the city and the sub-area plan. They anticipate for general uses that it would be a ground floor commercial on Granary and Laurel, and internal parking under the podium, so a ground floor commercial, and then parking coming in from the backside, which we'll see that, and a raised podium where that parking would go from existing grade rather than building down like they did on the condos across the street. There's also a number of public plazas and connections for pedestrian flow through the site and around the site, all back to the shoreline, through the condominium area, over to the parks and along the shoreline, as well as continuing to access the area which is currently our container village and bike park, which this project will not impact, and will continue to continue to use those as currently designed. These images, I just want to also caveat that these images show kind of some future build out. That's just to kind of show context. It's not the only projects under consideration for this are the 2 projects that are on the corner of Granary and Laurel. Kind of rotating around a little bit here, it also includes approximately 140 residential apartment units between the 2 buildings. Like I said earlier, they'll have local access roads that would come off of Granary, come into a cul-de-sac, into a parking area that would accommodate parking under the raised podium. And again, incompatible with the existing bike park and container village, and wouldn't impact that significantly. It would likely impact the location of the stage right now, but that it can continue to be used until construction would move forward on this, and that's a stage that we could relocate to another location, which was something we'll start working on to maintain that amenity. The other element here that I think is kind of important is that Harcourt has decided that with some feedback from staff and commissioners that there's some preference to retain the existing digesters in their current location. I think if you remember, there was an anticipated, kind of like the acid ball was moved over to Waypoint Park, there was anticipated early in the process that those digesters could be spread around the site, kind of to highlight the industrial past, be used as art, public art, kind of interesting pieces. But there's definitely been a push to, or an interest from the community. They've really kind of got a place in everyone's heart, and retaining them together and in their current location seemed like it made sense for lots of different reasons. There's also the initial concept shows a few opportunities for incorporating these digesters into kind of the public open space and incorporating them into the public plazas. Here, again, these are all concepts. There'll be a lot more work to come from them, but having plazas that kind of wrap around, that highlight them, also a kind of an access ramp that could kind of circle around there, show the tanks from different angles, different heights, anticipating that this kind of use could potentially be more active coffee shop or a restaurant that could really build on that kind of cool public open space that the digesters have already kind of got going around that whole area right now. So that's really it. That's the summary of kind of where we're at. There's a lot more detail we can go into, but there's also going to be a lot more opportunities to do that. This is really very high-level concept at this stage. This authorization to proceed is just allowing Harcourt to start their process with the city to get more refinement to these projects, get feedback from the regulators. We'll continue to work with them weekly, really, on kind of where they're at on these projects. The other part of this agreement also includes, the authorization to proceed includes a site access agreement. That'll allow Harcourt to start doing the more detailed investigation work, like geotechnical work, site surveys, the on-the-ground work in the footprint of the project that they need in order to design it to more detail. But we'll make sure that those access times work with those existing uses, that they wouldn't conflict with like the Wednesday Farmers Market, for example, that kind of thing. So pending commission approval on this one, with the authorization to proceed, once we issued that letter of authorization, they would have 90 days at that point. That's per our new revised process, 90 days to submit a complete application to the city for the land use permits and their design review process. And then that would be moved forward through the city process, which has a number of public components, public involvement components to it, including at least 2 public meetings, as well as public notification and a public comment period that's led by the city. So those would then be incorporated into their feedback to Harcourt. They'd revise their design, and then that's when the design would come back to us officially under that next set of submittals. So with that, I think it's staff's opinion that this fits with what we've always anticipated down here. We really are starting to see a lot of activation in the waterfront, which is exciting. It's been a long time coming. We got a lot of other things. The last commission meeting updated the commission on a lot of the other things that we've got going. And with this, staff does recommend approval for this authorization step, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Brian. So I'd like to point out to folks that the commissioners were briefed individually by Brian and our executive director Fix on this. And so we're probably not going to have a lot of questions. But one question I do have, Brian, and folks are probably wondering, you mentioned we may have to move the stage. Can you give us a ballpark on time frame? I think it's further out than people think. I think that it's going to take a while for stuff to get going to even start happening there. So what's our time frame before construction would start there at the earliest date?
Yeah, I think, what we anticipated in the master development agreement, I had to go back and look at that recently too, just to confirm, is that we anticipate this is about a 2-year process to go through before construction would start. So I think construction's anticipated to start at early 2024. End of 2023, early 2024. So another 1.5 years, give or take, depending on how fast they go through their permitting process. That's kind of on the back end of the time frame, but that's about what we're looking at. So we definitely have a couple more summers of being able to use that stage, and then we'll be actively looking for a place to relocate it and make sure that we're keeping those. I mean, it's so successful down there with the stage and with the Colshin and trackside and the bike park. So we definitely want to not lose any of that activity.
Yeah, I'm glad to see the digesters stay. So, Commissioner Bell.
Yeah, so I apologize. I don't know what technical difficulties I had, but I'm glad to be back. And we were briefed on this, and I'm just going to make a couple of things really clear. And one of them is this is a pre-approval process, and in no way, shape, or form is this commissioner going to let Harcourt off the timeline that we established for them. As we see construction happening down there, it'll be tempting to breathe the ether and forget where we came from, but we were really in a difficult position, and we did set some very serious timelines on development and time and when that would happen. And so they still must meet those timelines for the building of the 2 buildings, or that none of this happens. So with that in mind, I will say I like the design. I do wish it was a little bit more walkable. It's a little more industrial than I would like, but it is Harcourt's option, and I do see where the walking paths will be. I don't view this site as being automobile friendly in the future, because I don't think we are going to be automobile friendly in the future. But yes, I did take a look at it, got all my questions answered, and look forward to the community's response to this. But really just wanted to make clear that we're reviewing this as a timeline because we have to, but there is still that obligation to meet the timeline set in place for the condo developments. Other than that, I'm good.
Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, thank you. I think, my biggest questions are about what the retail or commercial space is going to look like. I think you build, even in a couple of years, you build residential and it's going to fill lickety split. And the bigger questions are, how do we activate that commercial space to make this the type of place that people really want to spend their time and get a lot out of, and continue what we've been building down here as a really exciting hub of the community. And so I think my biggest question going forward is wanting to hear more information about what strategy Harcourt has for that commercial space. Do they need any specialists to help them program and design and really plan to attract those companies and businesses that are going to make great use out of this and make it a really active area? Because it's potentially a number of different commercial space opportunities, and their performance at the Granary building has been mixed. And so if we had like a solid slam dunk, like they knocked it out of the park with their commercial space out at the Granary, it would be one thing, but it's taken a long time to fill that up. Some of the land, marquee spaces are still not filled there. And it just leaves me with some questions about what are they planning? Do they have the capacity to do this work as a company that doesn't have a substantial local presence? And are there ways that we can help them to make this as successful as possible? So those are some things that I'm going to be looking forward to and continuing to ask questions on as this develops.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. That's great.
I don't know if staff has any comments on that before I move forward.
Just going to say thanks. That's all those are really great comments, and I do agree. I think we all would last thing we want to see is have a bunch of residential there and empty storefronts down on the ground floor. So that's a really good point, something we can take back and get more detail on. And I think that we've got a lot of opportunities to engage with them on this area, the commercial activation, also building on our success at the trackside area. That I think that'd be it has to be a really thoughtful approach on how that all functions. So that's definitely something we'll take back to that team.
And what's going to happen with the Wednesday farmers market? Is there a home for them elsewhere on our site, or are they going to be looking for a different space?
We're going to try and find them a home. We haven't discussed this with them because we're probably 3 seasons out from that. We've got this year, next year, and probably even the one after that they'll be able to operate down there before we need to move them. But as we get a little closer and figure out what the grid layout is for the rest of the site, we'll start discussing moving them to a different location.
Okay. All right. I think it's been a nice addition there. It's definitely been part of the activation. My last question is just that parking pedestal. Am I correct that it extends over multiple buildings that are multiple phases? Because we're looking at 3 and 4. Does that parking pedestal carry over to build what would be maybe project 5? I don't know what sequence that is, but it looks like it has some shared construction and facilities.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the questions we also have notes on to take back. And we had asked them preliminarily that, is this something that could be, if you can see my cursor, yeah, it has a shared entrance space the way it's shown here. And their initial reaction was, yeah, they can build it up to this point and have it be just functioning for buildings 3 and 4, and then build onto it and add the adjacent buildings. The exact how of that, I think we want to auger into a little bit more, just to understand it, that it's being really well thought through. But the anticipation is that, yeah, no, this is the projects 3 and 4, and that we're not currently anticipating selling them this entire footprint for an undefined project on this side. It may be used for laydown and construction, all that kind of thing. But it's a point we need to clarify with them to make sure we're all on the same page. But the initial response was they could build this single access for this side of the pedestal and then build that side later. But I'm not an engineer or a structural engineer either, so I'm not exactly sure how they would plan to do that, but we'll get that feedback.
Okay. And, I certainly reiterate Commissioner Bell's point about keeping this as pedestrian centric as possible. I think that's what people have grown to appreciate down there so far. And I think that is going to be a really effective way to continue to activate this space in the future. That's it for me.
Mr. Briscoe, can I ask a couple more things real quick?
I was just going to ask if you had anything further. Go ahead.
Yeah, is this building going to be subject to the city's requirement to go all electric? Are all of these going to be subject to that provision?
Well, we're working through that right now because with the district energy system as the required to hook up to the district energy system once that power plant is constructed. And we're actively working with the city right now on that. That's the anticipation. The city, it appears there may be a little bit of conflict in the code right now on that. So we're working through that right now. The anticipation is though that they would be hooking up to the district energy system.
But that district energy system would then be all renewable or electric, is that?
Right, yeah, it's in the short and long term would be a low carbon or no carbon energy source. What exactly it is right now isn't defined, especially in the long term. Because the way we have that agreement written is that there would be opportunities to build like a no carbon alternative, but it has yet to be defined. The anticipation now is that there would be it'd be like a low carbon where there wouldn't be a fossil fuel as the primary fuel source, but there may need to be some backup or peaking or that kind of thing for that system. So we're working through that right now with the city team. But the anticipation is that all the buildings in this district would hook up to that DE system.
And what does that mean for the cogen plant?
Well, the cogen plant, I think, is a separate deal. That's not necessarily the source for this type, this district.
Okay. And then I guess I'm perfectly happy with the container village and pump track where they are. So if this doesn't come to fruition, I can see that being established even further and becoming more iconic. But that being said, if this is successful, then they are successful in moving forward with all the elements of this. Do we have a plan for moving that container village somewhere else on site?
We don't have a current plan for it, but it's been anticipated that it would definitely be mobile. It's a long-term thing that we want to kind of maintain. Robbie, feel free if you want to jump in.
Well, Commissioner, I think Harcourt can achieve its goals here with buildings 3 and 4 without affecting our container village. So the buildings you see in this picture that you're looking at right now, they're kind of blank.
Yeah.
Those would be on port-owned property, and we have full control as to when we build those. So it'd be totally a commission decision as to when you move or relocate trackside and the container village.
Yeah, that's right. And just to clarify, and apologies, that these were kind of shown just for future massing to kind of show what could build out there. Same thing. This one has a little more detail, but the only projects right now are these here, and that the foreseeable future is we're anticipating growing that container village, building on the success down there, and maintaining the bike park.
Music to my ears. Thank you.
I thought we were just going to enclose everything so it was dry. So, any more questions, commissioners?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Great presentation. We're hoping things keep speeding along, and we can get things built out down there for the public. Carrie, if you please.
Authorize Executive Director to execute an authorization to proceed for Harcourt's proposed projects number 3 and 4 within the Waterfront District Master Development Area.
Commissioner Bell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard.
Also a yes.
Commissioner Briscoe is also a yes. Passes 3-0.
Thanks, Commissioners.
Okay. The next action item, motion to approve Resolution 1403, adopting an updated mortgage model, superseding Resolution 1330, and making necessary language changes to the Harbor Rules, Regulations, and Rates Handbook as described in the resolution. Tiffany DeSimone.
You. I will attempt to get my presentation up here and share my screen. How do I close out of Tamara's?
Just hit escape.
Commissioners, can I ask a procedural question?
You may.
If we intend to follow and put more public process into this, are we going to be a little bit redundant? Are we going to make them do this twice if we have to bring this back at the next session? Should we maybe determine whether or not we're going to actually move forward with this proposal? And
I think that would probably be a good idea, given the testimony we heard, public testimony we heard earlier. Maybe we should have a short discussion to that effect, as I agree that we don't want to do things twice.
Yeah.
Commissioner Shepard, how do you feel on that?
I think that sounds very appropriate.
Okay, well, let's open if you'll stand by, Tiffany, we're going to have a bit of a discussion here. So Ken or Commissioner Bell, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to know what the two commissioners' feelings were about the public process and whether or not we've had enough of it in order to vote. And if it's the feeling that we need to go through another step, we should probably do that before we hear this presentation.
Mr. Shepard?
Well, I think it's, I put a lot of stock in the advice that Jim Kyle provides. And I feel like he steers us in a good direction. And he is a very conscientious and thoughtful person in terms of his advice. I also think it's quite telling that we haven't had any comments from the public. There's been nobody who has shown up to provide any commentary on something that is going to financially impact people in both of our harbors. Several thousand slips here, and nobody really came to discuss. That doesn't mean that everybody is fine with the proposal. It may mean that we haven't had enough bandwidth for people to hear it and to know this is on our agenda and to be able to be prepared to give us comments. And so just that alone feels to me that we need to give this a little bit more air so that the public has had their opportunity.
Commissioners, can I make
agree with both? I would agree with both of you. Little bells kind of went off when we had two people speak to the fact that it's not quite as transparent as it should be, and transparency is a big thing to me. I know we're probably going to get some feedback. I'm surprised I haven't had any phone calls or feedback to this effect. So maybe we missed something here, and I don't want to miss anything. I don't want the transparency of what we do at the port questioned. And I think that we may be a bit hasty in this, but let's hear from Executive Director Fix as well as Tiffany.
Well, obviously, we want to be transparent, so I apologize if we haven't been. We put this in front of the MAC. They voted unanimously to approve it. There were a lot of comments. We took those comments into consideration and changed the presentation to try and address those comments. But if there's still concerns about this, then absolutely we should put it off and try and be more transparent. That being said, if we're trying to be more transparent, I think it would be a mistake not to do today's presentation. Let's do today's presentation, get it on the record, get it out there for people to watch. It'll be in a YouTube recording that people can refer back to. And then when we talk about this in 2 weeks, it should be a lot less of a surprise.
So I would suggest to my fellow commissioners that we move forward with the presentation and delay vote until next meeting.
What masochists are we that we really want people to come in and yell at us for losing their peace, right? No, I'm in full agreement. Let's go forward with the presentation and then talk about when we should vote.
Commissioner
Sounds
Shepard?
fine to me. That sounds fine to me.
Okay. So I'd like to officially say that we're going to delay the vote on this subject until the next commission meeting, which I have a calendar in front of me, but our next formal commission meeting, we will vote on this. We will move forward with the presentation tonight as Executive Fix said, and I think that was a good idea. So please, Tiffany.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Tiffany DeSimone, Director of Marinas. So I appreciate that feedback. We certainly try not to make any of these presentations or assumptions in a vacuum, and have spent a lot of time talking about this. So I would like to begin by just sort of defining the mortgage model, because I think sometimes people aren't fully clear on what that means. So the mortgage model is a program, if you will, a document, a spreadsheet that is a combination of a host of information. So that's our real revenue numbers, our expenses. It takes into consideration some assumptions on future revenue based on occupancy, supply and demand, and then future project costs. All of that being said, it gives us a reasonable assurance, if you will, in the ability to schedule those large projects and plan for our operational needs in this closed loop system that is the marinas. So with that being said, I'll take a second to orient folks on what the harbor looks like so that when I'm talking about the inner and outer harbors, everybody's clear. So here's a photo. Rotor is, just to orient you, Rotor is here on the right. This is the inner harbor. So when we refer to the inner harbor, and that's comprised of gates 6 through 12, plus the boat launch. Up here is the outer harbor, which has gate 3 and our commercial fishing fleet, gate 5. This is the marina use plan. I think this captures a really good visual of how many user groups we are trying to manipulate and fit into our limited space. So this provides a guide for our marina staff to be able to assign moorage to all the different groups. So the pink area is our recreational moorage. The gold area is our commercial fishing. The turquoise is our upland merchant leaseholder moorage. And then the dark blue is for visitor moorage. So that's the inner harbor marina use plan. The next one is the outer harbor. So that's that gate 3 and gate 5. And you can see the gold there for the commercial fishing fleet. The bright yellow are our boathouses. And then the red is the Sawtooth and the Gillnet loading zone. So we use this to be able to move people around and shuffle people as we need to try to make space for everybody. Okay, this gives a current snapshot as of last week of our harbor occupancy and the demand on those spaces. So on the left 2 columns are the numbers, the boat lengths and numbers on the wait list for Squalicum Harbor, and on the right 2 for Blaine Harbor. It's a little off in that we no longer have any 26-foot slips in Blaine. We're completely at capacity in both harbors and continue daily to field requests at the very least for seasonal moorage. So you can see for occupancy that most of our wait list is in that 30 to 50-foot range. I read an article yesterday that says recreational boating is up 17.8% last year. So we know that's increasing. We know our supply isn't increasing, but demand is. So that's kind of the state of that. Okay, so part of that moorage model, we take into consideration our large capital projects. And this is not an exhaustive list of all of our capital projects, but these are the major ones. We took an approach to spread out the inner harbor upgrades and renovations into a 3 years phased approach. We think that spreads out the costs as well as allows us to shuffle boats around and have space to move everybody around without having to take stuff out of the water. So inner harbor dredging would start in 2025. 2026, Gate 9 renovations, and then we just move forward to outer harbor dredging and Gate 8, and then on to the newer gates, if you will. All of that shuffling about, we think has some real benefits in that it allows us to have taken the most current conditions use assessment and trued up our projected costs based on current numbers. We did some touring of additional marinas to include Friday Harbor. They just did they bought and redid Jensen's Marine, so we went out and talked to them and spoke to them about their costs and the permitting and all of that. So we spent some time updating our numbers and sort of drilling into realistic timeframes for large capital improvements. Okay, in addition to those big projects, we are immediately implementing some harbor service improvements. One of those points is that we're going to take some time and spend some attention and correction to deferred dock facility maintenance. And again, we took that conditions use assessment and we pulled out information and said, well, what can we get done now with budgets that we already have in place for those life extension projects. So we're going to increase our hard and soft security presence in both marinas. When I speak about hard security, we're talking about cameras, gates, access control, signage, that kind of stuff. And then soft security is basically our foot patrols. And we're just sort of reorganizing that to fit with the climate within the county, really, with increased theft and vandalism. We're going to increase our port staff presence at our docks and boat launches during those really high impact seasons. So if you follow recreational fishing, you'll know that those opening dates came out. So we'll be going out with some social media, as well as staffing up at the pinch points and pressure points in our harbors to really move people through the marinas and get people on the water. That's the goal. We're extending harbor office hours in both harbors, Blaine and Squalicum. We're adding an additional harbor operations specialist to that team. That allows us to be present during those busy boat launch. If you ever drive by the boat launch down here on Rotor on a busy day, you'll see it's a packed house. So we'll have longer hours where our staff can be kind of outside the office, also inside the office, and they worked really hard to come up with a schedule that works with the personnel that we have.
And Tiffany,
yeah.
I'm assuming that you're talking about being present at both harbors for
yes.
launches. I know we have a lot of pinch point around crab openings, and that is mostly impacted in Blaine.
That's correct, Commissioner. Both harbors, it's impacted at both. They have different openings oftentimes, so we plan to shuffle people around and get them to the appropriate place during those openings. We also are making a harder push for some social media outreach so people are aware that those are happening, and doing a little customer education about rules of the boat launch and how to manage.
Yes, well, I appreciate that. That was a request from some of our tribal fishing partners last season, so I appreciate you taking that to heart.
Yeah, and some of the feedback we received last year as well, speed limit signs on the breakwaters, and just a presence for marina staff to be actually on the water, to watching speed and really watching out for people's safety. Okay, and then that last one kind of is related to all that, and that's just increased focus on customer and community outreach, as far as education and what's going on in the harbors when there might be impactful situations, whether it be capital projects or fish openings or any of that. Okay, now this slide represents where we currently rank in the marina market in Washington State. So I'll give you a second to sort of absorb it, and I'll explain because it looks like a lot of information. Each of those boxes is a length of boat, and then that's a list of marinas in Washington State. Green is Squalicum, blue is, or gray is Blaine, and that's where we fall within the market currently. Keep this in mind because I'm going to show you where we would fall if we decide to make a rate change in the future. Okay, here's the numbers. So the top chart is, and this is for Squalicum Harbor. Let me preface, I do have a Blaine slide as well. So those are the numbers. The top chart is percentage. The very left column is the boat size, and then percentage by year. You'll see in 2021, we had no adjustment. We haven't had any rate adjustment since 2020. And then it goes by year incrementally, and then you'll see the next review is slated for 2026. That's that green column. And then there was some discussion at the MAC meeting, because I had originally showed out years with continuing those rates. I went ahead and just put in CPI there, and then the bottom chart, the white square, assumes CPI at 3%. Could be more, could be less, depending on the year. So there's a lot of information on that slide as well. And then there's the Blaine number.
The end result of where we're trying to get, because you have different percentages there, the end result, whether it's 2 or 3 years out, is that basically everybody will more or less be the same. Is that correct?
The end result is more or less to stay in the middle of that market. of the marina market. We're not the top,
Right, but
we're not the bottom.
Right, but everybody paying basically the same percentage, so to speak. Is that correct?
I think you're asking if we're trying to get everyone in the same place in the market, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Sorry, thanks. Okay, and then there's Blaine's numbers, and that assumes that 4% differential that we have in place currently in the current resolution.
And for those folks who don't know that, Blaine is 4% cheaper than Scolicum, correct?
That's right, and that was an incentive. I think I'm not sure what year that was implemented, but in order to fill that harbor, which we have done.
Probably 1965. That was the first
Maybe
time.
it's because it's so popular to present this mortgage model, so that was the last time. Okay, so here are the numbers, sort of the bottom line, and that's that model that I spoke to and defined at the beginning. You'll see it gives the cash flow for operations, debt. Those capital projects are assuming those numbers that we put forward most recently. And then I think the most telling of this is that last row on the bottom chart, which is just the difference between what we currently have going if we do nothing and then with this proposed model. And then the white and green, again, assumes that we want to maybe talk about CPI during that next review year in 2026.
Commissioners, if I can just point out the capital line, net cash flow capital. You'll see that in 2025, we used to have an $11 million spend. In 2026, 4.5. And then you see it starts to go out there, 4.5 million. 2028 is a bit of an anomaly at 9.5. But our goal here is to try and get to a consistent annual capital spend that we can plan on from a cash flow perspective, that our maintenance team can plan on from a workflow perspective, and that our customers know is coming from a customer service perspective. So rather than coming in here and doing a $30 million project and displacing a whole bunch of boats, our goal is to have continual ongoing capital replacement of floats and piling for consistency for those three areas that I mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, and then the last slide is where, if you remember back to the one with the purple and the gray, this is where we would fall in the market with our proposed rate adjustment by slip size or boat size.
This is after the first year, correct?
Middle of the market.
Yes.
Well, so commissioners, this is after the first year. So as we go into years 2, 3 of this increase, you'll see that starting to get more and more towards the middle, I believe. And a lot of this depends on what our competition does as well, right? So if we increase 4% on a given slip size and all of our competition increases 4%, we're not going to gain on that market. If they increase 5%, we're going to lose and drop down on this. So we're kind of forecasting here. This isn't solid math by any means. This is trying to predict the future. But if we run this out, our goal is to get towards the middle tier for each one of these slip sizes.
And do you think that, those increases of maintaining 6% for multiple years in a row, are we going to maintain that middle point, or are we going to get hovering up toward the top? That's the part I can't tell. And I understand we don't know what the other ports are necessarily going to do, but do we have any way of forecasting, in the 4 years that we're working on here, what this chart will look like at year 4 with the current increases that we're planning?
Well, I can tell you that what I believe will happen is everyone will come up at 3 or more % based on inflation, and that we will lose ground on our smaller slips, which is okay because you can see we're a little bit above the middle on those, and that we will gain ground on those that we have a 6% increase in. Again, we're kind of at the mercy of the market. Some of our competitors are very aggressive with rates right now, so we'll see what comes out at the end of the day. But we have taken into consideration what they've been doing and what we think they're going to do, and again, we're shooting for that middle of the market.
Mm-hmm.
And at the MAC meeting that I attended, I think all of us attended it actually. there was some confusion as to where we were going with this because the numbers were extrapolated out quite a ways. So I think clarification has been made to some degree tonight that we're just trying to stay in the middle of get everybody tied into the middle of the road as far as ports go on cost. Is that, am I speaking that correctly, Rob?
Absolutely, and that's why you'll see, if you look at the 56 footers as a great example, they're getting a 6% increase, but the 60 footers are only getting a 4%. Well, obviously, 60 footers is usually going to pay more per square foot than a 56, but we're giving a bigger percentage increase to the 56 because it trails the market by that much more.
Yeah, so there's going to be a feeling of well, you can call it picked on or bigger increases for one and the other, and it's not fair. But really, what we're trying to do is to get everybody to the same marketplace to the middle of the marketplace of all the ports put together. We're trying to stay in the middle. We don't want to be in the top tier, and we don't want to be on the bottom. We've got a lot of big projects. So I think there was some misunderstanding to where we were trying to go, and hopefully this discussion will clear that up somewhat so that they understand we're just trying to get everybody to the middle of the road, so to speak, over a period of time here.
And Rob, is another assumption built in that we are not increasing any rates over 6%? Because we, when you look at that 56 footer, even with the 6%, which is significant, we're still at the bottom third.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to gone there for 8% increase on the 56-foot level and get them a little closer to the middle, but I didn't think that would sell with either the commission or with the public, so we capped ourselves at 6%.
Okay.
I'm going to weigh in just on the CPI question because this really is my hot button. I think we tend to be somewhat arbitrary when we go through rate increases. And one of the ways to take politics out of this is to use the CPI index as a means for adjusting rates on an annual basis to keep us from losing ground. We can always cap those at the amounts that you have for each foot. So for example, if you think you need a 6% increase, if we tie it to the CPI, we can say the CPI or 6%, whichever is less, which means that if the inflation rate goes down, they pay less than that. They're just following CPI. And I think that's a way to at least introduce the inflation rate into the equation. And I would like to see us do that because eventually I'd like to see CPI be a non-political way to adjust rates. We just adjust rates based on the inflation factor. So as we talk about these, we can get to the equitable part about where we need to be from a rate standpoint. But moving forward, I'd love to see this commission do an in-depth discussion about whether or not we should be following the rate of inflation, primarily because we have to pay increased costs for goods and services as we move along. And the inflation rate needs to be, we need to keep up with the inflation rate because we're going to be paying inflationary prices for everything that we do, from labor to fuel to supplies. And that does not go down just because we have a lower than inflation rate on our mortgage rates. So that's my plug for moving to a CPI.
But just remember, CPIs are great. What you said is great, and it's all true. But there's some people that can't keep up with inflation and have boats and still like to do their boating. So there has to be a little human feeling in the element of dealing with this mortgage model. I mean, if we need the money is one thing, but if we're just doing it because the CPI rate's what it is, that's not the right way to do it, I don't feel. It's always going to have a human component in it and make a decision. So if you make a rule and set it that this is what it is no matter what, we've been there. We had 3% before you were commissioner. We had a 3%, just went 3% automatically every year. And it wasn't very palatable to a lot of people. Now, when you have reasonings for it, it's fine. And as far as the political part of it, we're a nonpartisan group, so I don't think politics fit into this.
No, and I'm not, this isn't a political thing. I'm just saying, if you do CPI, you don't have to come back for a vote. And at some level, you can cap that. I can say, you know, if you only want to do 6%, say we're going to do CPI up to 6% if you want to limit that. But at some level, from a fairness standpoint, we do need to keep up with inflation. And if we don't, then we're asking people who aren't on the water to subsidize our moorage. And the people up in Linden who don't have boats on the water, you know, we're going to have to justify it to them as well as everybody else, because we're making it up with tax revenues at that point. And I don't think that adjusting rates just according to inflation should be that controversial.
Well, we wouldn't even have to adjust rates if we could get our other projects off the ground and get more money coming in from there. This was never a problem, I remember way back when. So there's a lot of outlying factors that could make most of this problem go away if we could just get it to work. So it's all probably going to be moot here in about 2 years. We won't have to worry about it, maybe, I hope. So we never know. But point taken, Ken. I get what you're saying. I really do. But I also got to have for me, there's a sentimental feeling in trying to help people have boats enjoy it and not break the bank. So, you know, it's and as far as who owns the harbor, everybody in Whatcom County owns the harbor, and I expect everybody's going to have to pay their share whether they boat or not. So that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and I guess my take on this is, you know, I want to make sure that we are able to keep boating to be accessible to as many people as possible without driving them out because of rates being so high. And so I have a knee-jerk reaction against CPI because it can fluctuate, and I don't want it to fluctuate 1 year at 9% and be duly unburdensome. But if we were to cap it at a lower percentage on a yearly basis, I think that has more justification that I can understand, and we can communicate to people so that they have something predictable, and we're able to show the predictable maintenance that also needs to occur on a continual basis. And so I'm willing to have that further discussion and think critically about having an ongoing increase. I know our real estate department has a kind of often a set 3% or increase. And so if the harbors need to have something in similar line, I think that could be acceptable as well.
Okay.
Tiffany, go ahead. We didn't mean to interrupt you
That's okay. That was your time for feedback. I hear what you all are saying, and we continue to take feedback from all of you, as well as the MAC committee, the subcommittee, our customers of the marinas and the boat launches, and continue to have all those discussions. That's it for my presentation.
So commissioners, we'll put this back on the agenda for May 3rd. Bring a presentation. It might be slightly revised from this as we try to improve it and receive feedback, but otherwise we'll just count on repeating this on May 3rd.
And please understand, everyone, that we're not trying to put this off. It's just, as Jim and Paul spoke to, I think maybe that we need to get a little more input. And think about it maybe a little bit more before we make a firm decision on it. So, Tiffany and Rob, thank you for your patience on this. I know it's something that the staff wants to get done, and we want to get it done too. And I think we need to vet it out a little bit more here. So, I guess, does anyone have anything further to say on this before we move on? I see my video's kind of stopping and going. Is my audio okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, with that, that would have been the last, that's the last action item presentation. We have any public comment at this point in time?
Here. Oh, yeah.
Paul Burrell would like to speak.
Yeah, commissioners, I'd just like to thank you for delaying the vote on this. I think it's a good idea for the public to have a little more time. I don't think my idea was that this was not a bad idea. I think there's a lot of thought went into this plan from staff and consideration with the commissioners, but I do think giving it an extra cycle here might be the best thing just for point of clarity. So thank you very much for doing that, and thank you to staff, and excellent presentation, Tiffany. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Anyone else? See anybody there? Anybody hiding in the weeds, Rob?
I think we're good.
Okay, so we'll move on to other business.
Staff has one or two if we can jump in.
Go ahead.
So Gina Stark has received a grant, and I can't accept grants. It has to be an action by the commission. It did not come in time to put it on the formal agenda, but it needs to be accepted in a timely manner. That means it can't wait till May 3rd. So I'm going to ask Gina to say a couple words about what the grant is for, who it's coming from, and then we'll ask for you to take a quick vote on receiving that grant.
And Rob, I sent this full packet out to the commissioners, so they should have already had a chance to look it over, what Gina's presenting.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Are we going to call it the informal grant action item?
If you choose, commissioners. Good evening, commissioners. For the record, Gina Stark, Economic Development Project Managers. I appreciate you guys giving me just a quick moment on an already packed agenda. So I did put in a very quick and brief memo in your packet kind of outlining what this was. The timeliness was that I did need this accepted in a quick turnaround. And so what it is, I received a $15,000 grant from the National League of Cities. And this is for a pilot project in partnership with the City of Bellingham, the National League of Cities. And also part of this pilot project is Western Washington University. And then I'm also working with the Small Business Development Center. And just very quickly, what this pilot project is it is working with the Black, Indigenous, and people of color, small businesses in our community. As you know, they are disadvantaged, especially when it comes to working with government entities and what we call anchor institutions like Western, when it comes to getting contracts. Just for various reasons. A lot of times there might be language barriers, or a lot of times they're just really just working hard and putting their heads down, and they just feel like, that just isn't a lane for me. And so this pilot project enables us to have just a small amount of money to do outreach and to do an event that we'll be doing this summer with these partners, to do outreach, to do advertising, and we will be just creating great relationships to help them to register so that they can do business with Western, potentially business with us, and to eventually that they will get contracts with entities like Western. So it really is a great opportunity. I'm really excited to be working with some amazing partners that we've been working with all along. And I'm hoping that this is going to be one of many things that I do with this amazing group. So just a quick synopsis. And then I ask for your approval.
Commissioner Bell.
Yes. No questions.
Well, no, no questions. Okay. Commissioner Shepherd.
Great job, Gina. You do such good work following through with topics that have been discussed over the years, and we've got opportunity for making sure that our contracting is as equitable as possible. And we just need more people to bid on projects here at the port. And so I very much welcome us extending an invite and helping to do some small business development in the community. I think it will benefit us and have a ripple effect elsewhere too. So good work on that.
Thank you.
Gina, I hope you realize how important you are to the people of Whatcom County and the position you have here at the port. You really do wonderful stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That means a lot. Thank you.
Commissioners, a motion.
Please, you want to read the informal action, or how are we going to do this?
One written up.
I don't have it written up. I guess I should have.
Commissioners, a motion. I'll get this. A commissioner's a motion to approve the receipt of the grant as described by Gina Stark.
Yes.
Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Shepherd.
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe is yes as well.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you.
We have one more, Rob?
Well, just the pavilion that I think you're going to bring up. So that's the other one.
Right. So we'll move on to other business. One thing I should probably clarify before we get going down the road too far, and this is in reference to moorage rates. I am a commercial fisherman, an active commercial fisherman. I'm considered ACF under the acronyms. So when it comes to raising moorage rates or changing moorage stuff, with regards to commercial moorage, I would participate in the discussions, but as far as voting on that rate change, I would recuse myself from the vote. With recreational moorage decisions, I will be in the discussion as well as the vote, as it does not bear on, I have no bearing on that, or it doesn't affect me. So I just wanted to make that clear for folks so they understand where I'm at with that. Under other business, we have the Fisherman's Pavilion I'd like to have a little discussion about. We have some use issues there as far as monetary charges some of the folks have brought up, so we're probably going to discuss that a little bit. I'd like to, and Tiffany's going to help me on this because she sent me the slide and she'll show it for me. I'd like to, a little bit of background of our harbor for folks so they kind of understand how the Fisherman's Pavilion came about and why the commercial fishermen is something like that to use. So Tiffany, if you could put up the Inner Harbor and Web House graph for me, I'd appreciate it.
One of these. Web House.
Yep.
Not going to share. Is that sharing?
Not yet. There it is. There you go. We're up and running. Could you move it up just a little bit? Don't quite have the whole. There you go. That's good enough. So before our Inner Harbor that Tiffany spoke to earlier was there, all of that area, the peninsula you see over there where the hotel and that is at, as well as Web House, one is located as Wanish Park. None of that was there. That was all logs, log storage for the mill that was over in the I&J Waterway. And it'll become clear why I'm saying these things. I'll make it as brief as possible. Web Locker 1 used to be over where the number 83 is, 83 and 84. That was where that Web Locker was. Web Locker 5 was not there. So the fisherman's area, as I grew up at the harbor in the late 50s, 60s, until the Inner Harbor was built, 70s and 80s, the fishermen had that area where Web Locker 5 was. That was our gear working area, as well as the road that now is north of the Web Lockers there. There was no harbor there. That was all gravel out there, and that's where we worked on gear. And, we had a fair amount of room. And at that point in time, most fishermen weren't doing multiple fisheries. Most fishermen had a single fishery they did. Some did dual fisheries, but really there wasn't very many year-round fishermen, so to speak, working out of that harbor. So when we built the Inner Harbor, in fact, the ground where Web Locker 1 wasn't even there. The breakwater that comes out from between 3 and 5 came out, and from that breakwater to the east was all water, right up to the north end of Web Locker 1, and then out to about 23. It went straight across. That was the peninsula. None of that park, none of that stuff was there. So when we built the new Inner Harbor, when we created all this stuff, we lost the ground north of the Web Lockers for working. We lost the ground in between Web Lockers 2 and 3 to Web Locker 5, so that ground went away. And Web Locker 1 was moved because it was parking and the mall was needed over there. And then parking and storage and then the park. So the commercial fishermen lost most of the area we had to work in. And it's kind of condensed over the years even more so with the parking and so on and so forth. And fishermen doing multiple fisheries to meet the cost of living demands. We had to increase our fisheries. So now everybody's doing 3 or 4 fisheries a year. So the web lockers are pretty well stuffed with gear because we do not have enough web lockers. So if you got 3 fisheries going on, your gear locker is from the door to the back and to the ceiling. It's full, trying to keep the gear out of the UV where it doesn't get ruined. So basically, the only place you have to work is underneath the overhang out there. And if your web locker faces the wrong direction, you're going to be wet all winter and cold trying to work on gear. So the Whatcom Fishermen's Association president and some other folks came forward and talked to myself and talked to the commission, the one preceding this commission, and talked about putting up a fisherman's pavilion, a fisherman's workplace, and wanted to put it over in the corner by the park there. So this project started out as just a covered area with a southern wall and maybe a slight wall on the east side. And I was in on those discussions up at that point, and then it started to grow a little bit, and I kind of moved away from the discussions, and other stakeholders and folks took over, and it grew into the building we have today. And there seems to be some issues with the building we have today. Folks saying, well, why do the fishermen get to use it? Well, this is why I just explained what I tried to explain. We don't have anywhere else to use. Our lockers aren't big enough. We're tired of working in the weather. So I shouldn't say we, I didn't. The fishermen of Whatcom County asked us to put a building up. So this is what the port has done. And it's going to be used by a lot of different stakeholders. There's time frame uses on it and so on and so forth, which brings us to the rate or the fee that's being charged to daily fee that's charged to the fishermen to use. And remind, this isn't a heated. So it's a lighted area and enclosed, but it's not heated. So it's still in the wintertime, it's going to be a bit chilly, but it's way better than what's available. Plus it gives us some space, or gives the fishermen some space to work on gear. So with that, Rob, if you wanted to say a little bit, or Tiffany, to kind of talk about it a little bit, I'd appreciate that.
So the concept here was that in the summertime, basically June, July, August, and most of September, the facility would be available for the port to rent out for events, and our event staff would take care of that, much like we do the boathouse or the dome room over at the ferry terminal. And we would set rates for that are very similar to market rates for event rental facilities like this one. And I think we're going to come to you in early May with a schedule of rules and rates for that for the summer season. In the winter time, as soon as Sea Feast is over, we're going to turn it over to the fishermen. When I say turn it over to the fishermen, I've got myself into trouble in the past by saying that. I mean they're going to be allowed to use it and that we would manage it. They would have to come to us and reserve it and go through that process and pay a fee to use it. Staff don't believe that we can provide this facility for free and not run into a gifting of public funds issue. We believe we have to charge something. We have not come to the commission for a rate on this. We probably haven't been as organized as we wanted, but the construction delays kind of put us on our heels. And I set a rate, and I have the authority to rent out facilities for short-term contracts. So I sent the rate of $25 a day for the fishermen to use this to repair their gear. And that kind of takes you to where we are today. Right now, if a fisherman wanted to come in there tomorrow and repair their gear, they'd pay us a $25 fee. We're not requiring any kind of damage deposit or insurance. We have a business relationship with most of these fishermen that we feel comfortable not requiring those things. Most of them have web lockers from us, they have moorage from us, et cetera. So again, that's where we're at today. We have a $25 fee for the fishermen. We are going to come to you in May for the recreational or the event type of a fee schedule, along with the rules and regulations for the facility.
Tiffany, anything to add?
Nope, I have nothing to add.
So I'll just kind of start the discussion, I guess, a little bit with my fellow commissioners. As folks know, we have to meet in a public meeting. We just can't call each other up and talk about this stuff or what have you. So things are transparent. But just one moment. So I think when this was brought about, that we expected a fee, at least some of us expected a fee, whether it was going to be daily fee or a weekly fee. It really hadn't been talked about a lot. So the $25 fee was put in place. I'm not sure we talked about a lot. As Rob said, we're trying to get things going. Everybody's trying to get things going. So folks may have gotten caught a little bit by surprise. Some folks think the fee's, too high. Some folks think the fee's okay, and some folks think the fee might be too low. I've heard all three. But I'd like to be able to look everybody in the eye and say, hey, we brought this up for discussion. We've talked about it. We want your input on it. And we're not taking a vote on this. This is just simply a discussion this evening, because I'd like to know how my fellow commissioners feel about the fee. And it also allows the public to see how all three of us feel about the fee. Personally, I think the $25 fee might be a little bit tall for a daily rate, given, gear repair isn't real quick. It takes some time. Some of our fishermen do better than others, but if it takes you 10 days to fix a net, it's going to cost you $250. To some people, that doesn't seem like a lot. To some fishermen that may be struggling, it is a lot. Fish prices are just starting to come around. We've been stuck at 1970s fish prices for a long, long time. So some folks aren't doing as well as others, and some folks are on a pretty fixed income situation. So I just would like to talk about this so that everybody has a chance to air their feelings about it. So with that being said, I'll be quiet, and either one of my fellow commissioners could start the discussion if they'd like.
Sure, I'll take the lead off on it. I appreciate you bringing this up, and I guess what I've always assumed, and I feel like what we've said is we've got to have a learning year to figure out and to work out the kinks. And so this is just part of that learning year that I've been anticipating, where we try and get the right recipe in place so that this facility works for the intended user groups that it was built for. And so I appreciate this being brought up. I've always felt like the $25 was a little steep myself, and I've heard mixed reaction to that. Some people have agreed, some have felt fine with it. Not being a fisher person myself, I didn't know how long the average person needs to repair a net, and so that's useful information to hear that it could be multiple days that somebody would be using the facility, and maybe we should be thinking about a multi-day rate or weekly rate that is also available at some discount. But I think nobody wants this building to sit empty. We want it to be used. We want it to attract more fishing families to the community, and to be a real asset that draws people in and makes this an attractive harbor to do this type of business. And so I expect the rates and ease of use to help facilitate that.
And commissioners, I probably should have mentioned this, and I think Tiffany wants a comment, but we do a forklift rental, and we charge $35 an hour for the forklift.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, it certainly wasn't just an arbitrary number. We did receive feedback from some members of the CFA. We also, as a staff, try to make sure we don't get caught in Tamara's audit situation on our heels as well, as far as gifting public funds. And so when we had those conversations with some of the CFA members, they made it very clear that they wanted the facility to be easy to use. They wanted to be able to show up at the harbor office and reserve it or use it or rent it like any other piece of equipment in the harbor. So what we did is we took a look at fees that we charge for equipment in the harbor. And we modeled this a bit after that, if you will. So like Rob says, $35 an hour for the forklift. We have other fees for other equipment you need to use. But we feel like we made a good faith effort in not requiring a bunch of red tape for the user group to get in there. So that was the sort of the thought process behind that, just for your information.
Commissioner Bell?
Well, I just have a difficult time you're all hanging on my words, aren't you, right now? If
at
$25
this isn't a vote, it's just a discussion.
No, I know, at $25 a day, if it was used all 30 days of the year, what is that, $750 a month? For a $2 million building. I mean, to put that in perspective,
well,
where else could you get?
I would come back at the $2 million building. That's not what was asked for in the first place. That's what we ended up with because the port decided that we'd like to use it for other things when it wasn't being used for events and that. And that's why it ended up where it was. Ken, it didn't start out as a building like that. It started out a roofless.
Well, so we cut it in half and it's $1 million building. So you got $1 million building and you're getting $750 a month for. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. And I don't find that rate to be unreasonable for $1 million building.
I'm not saying it's unreasonable. I'm having a discussion about it.
No, and that's just my take on it. I mean, I thought they made a good judgment call on that, and we spent a lot of money. And if anybody's got a hardship, I think we can address the hardship as it comes up. But I do think we need to at least get a return on the building, and I don't think $750 even a month even covers it.
Commission, would it be helpful if we had a daily and a weekly rate so we could do the $25 a day and maybe $75 a week, which comes to what, $15 a day? So you're getting a discount if you do a weekly rental?
Yeah, that's a good idea, Rob. I mean, I just wanted this discussion so that it was out there in the open, and the people understood that we would like to be flexible with their needs. I mean, this isn't about me. I've got a 60 by 40 pole building I do my work in. So, you know, I've heard concerns from more than one fisherman about that, you know, and I think a lot of it is, you know, as you spoke to, Rob, we started out this process with a different thought, and we as the port made some promises that we thought we could do, and things kind of went sideways because of the legalities of things in the world we live in now. So it's kind of turned the Easter basket upside down, so to speak, and a lot of the eggs rolled out cracked, and we're just trying to glue the eggs back together and put them all back in the basket. It's just going to be a process, as Commissioner Shepherd said. It's just all trial and error, and I'd like everybody to understand that this stuff isn't written in stone. That we want to work with everybody and find the best means to the end, and that's why I wanted to have a discussion, because that's where I want to go with it. I want everybody. You can't make everyone happy, but I'd like to have at least 90% of the people happy. That's what I'd like to see. And this isn't about me and whether I think it's too much or not. It's about the people that live here, work here, and give a tremendous amount to our community, and need a place to work. So that's what it's about to me.
I think exploring that option of a weekly rate and is a good possibility. If people really need it for an extended period of time, again, I want the building to be used, and there are other inputs that are going to come to pay this building off over the long term. It's going to be used for weddings and events and other things, and it's going to be, I'm sure, quite popular. It's in a great location and it's a beautiful space. And so it is going to attract other investments to recoup its investment costs. And I think we build projects for economic development. And this is part of what we do in economic development. And so if that also means having a rate structure that works for our working community, that's something I think we can, it's not going to break the Ports Bank if we are charging a couple of dollars less. Rob may be grimacing when I say that, but it may make a bigger difference to some of our constituents who work hard in our community and put a lot of time and effort into port related business.
You're correct, Commissioner. This is very small in the grand scheme of the port's finances, but one of the reasons for establishing a rate and then making it a competitive rate is to keep people moving along. We did not want someone to rent this building and tie it up for weeks at a time because it was $5 a day, and then it becomes a storage yard. So we wanted to keep it productive, keep people moving through there, and having a bill to pay will keep people moving.
And Rob makes a good point there. You all are familiar with the pot slot, as we affectionately call it, which is that outdoor storage where fishermen can store their gear. And we have a heck of a time enforcing that and getting people to move along. And we charge a really minimal rate that doesn't really impact. And so it's tough to get things moved out. Yet we continue to receive feedback, both from commission and the public about what a mess that parking lot looks like. So we try to balance it all and take it all into consideration when making these informed decisions.
That's kind of why my reaction was the way it was, is if I've got an extra time and I can't get to it today, $25 is meaningless in storing that stuff an extra day. And if it helps us expedite it, I'm all in favor of it, but whereas some are complaining that 25 is too much. On the other hand, if you're running behind or some other priority comes up, you're looking at that and saying, "Oh, I can let that go. It's only $25 today." And quite frankly, $25 today isn't worth what it was last year at this time.
I'd hate to go down that road of that conversation, Ken, because you're saying, so to speak, that people are going to do things like that, and I don't want the commission to present that. I don't think we can put thoughts or words in people's mouths that they're going to take advantage of the system when we don't know that.
Well, I also want to say that if somebody's got a true financial hardship, I think we can address that, and we should address that, but it shouldn't impact the rate.
And keep in mind, everybody keep in mind, there's multiple users that can use that building. So it's not one person in there at a time. And believe me, if a fisherman needs to get something done and he sees somebody else loafing and it's holding him up, the guy that's loafing is going to get out of the way one way or another, believe me.
So, Commission, it's getting late. Can I suggest we're going to bring you this for the summer use? Maybe we'll just bring you a package for year-round use of the pavilion, and we'll throw a weekly rate in there and a daily rate in there, and for the fishermen, and then we'll also have the event usage in the summer at the May 3rd meeting.
I'm good with that. I think the discussion was good here this evening. The short one we had, I think it was good, and you're correct, it is getting late.
Okay.
Are you guys
I'll
good
work
with
on that. Am I being directed for an action memo or presentation?
Action memo.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Thank you.
Commissioner Bell?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with it too. Anybody have any other business other than what I took it up with?
No, I would like to ask the chair just to maybe consider for the next agenda. We did talk about doing parking in Fairhaven. And I noticed the city is putting metered rates into the shopping areas in Fairhaven. And I think that's going to be a dampener for anybody doing retail. I know why they're doing it is because the employees are parking along the streets, but I don't want to discuss it today. I think we pretty much worn our welcome out here with this crowd. But if you could add that to the agenda for next time, I would appreciate it.
I would agree to that. Did you get all that, Rob?
Carrie's taking notes, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Shepard, do you have any other business?
I expect at our next meeting we'll get an update on the RFP process. I don't really need any today, but I'll look for hearing about that at the next one.
Yeah, we won't be ready to.
Sorry for the board mill.
Yeah, Commissioner, we won't be ready for a formal presentation, but we'll certainly give you some stats as to how many people submitted proposals and what the timeline is for reviewing those and get back to you with a little more information.
Yep.
That closes on the 28th, I believe.
Yep.
Yep.
So Rob, I know you're watching the Alcoa thing a little bit there. Can you give us a quick update on where they're at with power negotiations? Are things looking good or poor?
I think they're at a standstill. I see Don Goldberg still on, so feel free to jump in, Don. But my last understanding is BPA is claiming they can't legally give the power at the rate that Blue Wolf is requiring to reopen in Talco. So that they're at a bit of a standstill.
I'm Don Goldberg, Director of Economic Development. That's correct, Commissioner. I do believe that from what I've followed up with Blue Wolf last week, they are still in negotiations with BPA, and they are looking at potential open market rates as well. So they're still very interested and still pursuing opening the facility.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Rob.
Sure.
Anybody have anything else? Anybody have anything else? Going twice? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.